Well, hi. Welcome to my name's Paul Marko, and with me is Mindy Erkin. Welcome to another episode of the Techno Crime Fighters Forum. This one's going to be very exciting. We have all the joint investigative team here, and they've been talking about interesting things so far. And one of the things that they're going to cover today, talk about, is a pastor that got stopped at Dallas International Airport. And they're suspecting something very deep about this, and they'll unfold what they know about this for you, along with other things that are going on with the joint investigative team. Before we start, though, I'd like to mention that we're hosting this Pinecone Utopia portal, and we're looking for different things that can help the TIs in the short term. And sometimes we get a lot of interest, sometimes we don't. We've been trying to do a Monday night podcast on this, Sunday night podcast on this. But we got a really interesting letter today from New Zealand. And I wanted to just take just 1 minute and have Mindy read that because it's really motivating for us to keep going.
Okay. Hello again, Paul and Mindy. I love that you are seeking healing solutions for those targeted. You kindly asked for some practical suggestions. I've developed my own survival tactics, and I'm working with many suffering from complex PTSD. Narcissistic abuse is commonly at the roots of this suffering, and of course, EM-targeted individuals suffer acutely from these symptoms. It'd be interesting to know whether EM weaponry targets the amygdala, hippocampus, and its connections, as the trauma inflicted by psychopathic abuse of all forms results in disruptions of these intracerebral pathways, of which little is really known. The psychopath's brain is very toxic to the targeted individual, and he leaves a link here. And of course, there are the Eastern esoteric models to be considered. And again, a couple of different links.
We'll link this on Pinecone Utopia portal. Also,
Right.
This guy's a medical doctor. You should know.
I wonder whether Eastern methods are so effective for TIs because they are heart energetic focused. Maybe the perpetrators are missing a trick here. We need to be ahead of their game. These techniques are in the realms of non-locality and quantum concepts and go beyond the low vibration duality embraced by the aggressors. And
Well, he's got some techniques listed below, but we will put that on. The intracerebral pathways, the amygdala, I've always had trouble with that, and hippocampus. That's, I think, more prevalent in women than men. So that might be another reason that...
that there's more women in the program, perhaps.
Well, anyway, we just wanted to read that because we want to keep interest going, keep collecting data, and then the joint investigation team and Mindy and myself can sit down and see if we can see if we can postulate a hypothesis as to what's working and what's not. So that's all I had to say. So I guess we'll just get into the main body of the program. It's a lot. Well, thank you. Ramola, would you like to start and direct our attention?
Oh, sure. Thank you, Paul. Hi, everyone. So, and those are wonderful suggestions, actually, but it's very interesting that this person is a medical doctor too, and I'd love to communicate with him a little bit further to see what he knows about targeting and see if he's willing to step forward and speak out about it.
I've asked him, and if he is, one of us will get him, I'm sure.
That's great.
He's an interesting guy.
We go after everybody. Everybody
guy
who has a voice.
Anybody who has a voice and wants to chime in, and this guy might have some information we haven't considered. So he's going to be a good contact.
Oh, wonderful. That's wonderful.
We'll put this on the forum this week. It'll be in before Sunday.
Brilliant.
It'll be on the portal.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thanks so much, Paul and Mindy. Okay, so today what I wanted to actually mention and bring attention to is the article that I posted on Saturday, which was about a week in the making because we were waiting for information. And this article, it's right now on my homepage of, go to everydayconcern.net, the Everyday Concern Citizen. You'll see this article published there on the front page. What it highlights is a pastor from India who, with a whole group of other pastors, has been engaged in a long period of praying and fasting for those who are being targeted and assaulted in America and around the world, particularly those on Karen Stewart's team, because this pastor is somebody whom Karen was in touch with from the beginning. And I really would like to speak to Karen a little bit further in just a minute about the whole story. So this pastor was engaged in this long period of, prayer and fasting and interceding to the heavens on behalf of Christians in particular who are targeted in America. And what happened was he recently embarked on a visit to the US. And the next thing we heard was that all sorts of crises had occurred at the airport, and he was being stopped, he was being detained, and before you knew it, he was being deported back to India. So the question arises now, why was this pastor picked on? Why was he selected in this fashion at the airport by the TSA? Why was he immediately deported? Why was he not even allowed to contact Karen during that time period, his good friend in the US? Plus, he has many other good friends. And part of the story here is that it is the great possibility that this pastor would indeed get in touch with his very influential friends who are, big name pastors in Texas, who possibly had an in with President Trump, and possibly bring this whole issue of targeting and the persecution of Christians and other Americans with electromagnetic and sonic weapons to the attention of President Trump, possibly in a private audience. I mean, because the possibilities were there, is that why this person suddenly became the target of immediate attack by the deep state? Because, even though the TSA, which is a branch under Homeland Security, was involved, we have to wonder if the deep state behind Homeland Security, or if Homeland Security is indeed the deep state, or is part of the deep state, if they kicked in and said, there's too much danger here for disclosure, there's too much danger here for a complete exposure of this targeting scenario, which they're still trying to keep under wraps, despite the fact that it's so pervasive and so obvious, and everyone's talking about it. Except mainstream media, of course, which are all CIA fronts, Washington Post, New York Times, etc. So is that what happened? Is that what happened? Did the deep state suddenly kick in and try to stop disclosure? So that's the question that, inevitably has to be asked. And there are so many facets to the story. So, maybe we should ask Karen perhaps to go into detail a little bit into the story and tell us how exactly this happened, and, because she was there throughout. So Karen, if you could just sort of jump in and take over.
Okay. Excuse me. Yes. On Facebook, I befriended a pastor, a female pastor in India. And through her, I befriended the head of several churches. And in our discussions, we talked about, I'm getting some kind of feedback here. In our discussions, we talked about problems that they were having in India. And also we began talking about this type of targeting happening here. Luckily, the female pastor, we'll call her Miriam, actually did have a technical background. And so she started to ask questions and was receptive to the answers. And we had already been friends and praying for each other. And she brought in the head pastor, and he basically listened to what I had to say, and I sent him several articles so that he could educate himself. And he started to educate the other pastors in his churches. And they decided probably about 3 months ago that this was such a dire evil that was basically besetting the earth, that they had to start praying and fasting. So several of these pastors would fast from Monday through Saturday and pray for us. And as you said in your article, this is something that kept them from doing home visits and kept them from basically having people come to their churches because, sometimes if you don't remind people, you don't go after them, you don't say, hello, we need you, you're important to the church, they won't come. So when they don't come, then their offerings are lower and they're able to help fewer people. So they were not only sacrificing time and effort, but they actually were sacrificing money to help us. And like I said, this has been 3 months that at least that they've been doing it. Well, the pastor, we'll call him Pastor A, decided that he would use his contacts in the United States because he'd been here 4 times previous with no problems whatsoever. And he had actually helped at least one of the pastors that he knew when that pastor came to India. So he was instrumental in this pastor's ministry and visit to India. So he said, well, I will come and I will visit him and I'll inform him as to what is going on. We'll visit again because there seems to have been an open invitation. And he wanted to let this man know and let several other pastors know. And they do seem to know President Trump. In fact, this particular pastor that he wanted to visit has been there with Trump, laid hands on him, prayed with him, prayed for him. So he does have connections to Trump. And the previous visits that this Indian pastor had made entailed even driving all over the United States just to see the United States. And there was never a problem. Well, one of the stories that apparently came out was that, oh, you're going to come here to work. No, he wasn't coming here to work. He never came here to work. They said, okay, you don't have a work visa, so you're gone. Well, that was an excuse that they thought up later, And he had called me after being held more than 24 hours. He got into Dallas probably at 9:05 in the morning on a Saturday. And he was able to call me late in the afternoon Sunday. And he said, I'm being deported. And so I asked to speak to the TSA and asked them what was the problem. And they said, we can't tell you. And I said, well, he's got a round trip ticket. He's got people to visit. I don't understand what the problem is. He's been here 4 times before. They said, oh, we can't tell you, which I thought was absolutely ludicrous. And they tried to demand money from me to send him back to India. And that just wasn't going to fly. And I found out later that there's no way that that he or I should pay for that because according to American law, he was just going to be put back on the airplane and the U.S. taxpayer would have to pick it up. That's the procedure. That's the protocol. So this was obviously not on the up and up. And so it took several hours and I involved somebody named Letitia. And she knows more so the ins and outs of some of these laws, and she called and questioned them, as did another lady named Christy. So they had 3 people calling them and saying, what are you doing and on what basis? So I think they rather panicked. And so they put him on the first I think it's Emirates airline back to India. And they had tried to threaten me and say, if you don't pay for this man's ticket back to India, we're going to put him in jail in Dallas. Which I thought was outrageous. And so the next day when they figured out that we weren't falling for it, then they basically shoved him onto an Emirates plane and then told him, if you don't pay for this ticket in Dubai, which is a stopover before India, then they'll put you in jail in Dubai. And that's what he reported to me as he was being put on the plane. He said, I'm being forcefully put on this plane right now. And we were trying to get immigration lawyers involved, but there just wasn't time. So he ends up getting on this plane and the Emirates people in Dubai said, okay, that's ridiculous. We're just going to send you back to India where you're home. We're not going to harm you. We're just going to send you there and then you can take care of whatever this ticket problem is there. In the meantime, I've been calling Emirates and saying what's going on. And one of the people was a male and he was very helpful, very concerned. He said, I've never heard of this before. He said, Emirates will not take somebody who hasn't paid for a ticket. He said, I don't understand what's going on. So he did call the ticket people in India, and they confirmed that they had taken him all the way back to India and nobody had paid for that ticket. And so arrangements were made to hold his luggage and hold his passport until he could pay for the ticket. Now, luckily, he did run into somebody at the airport who knew him or knew of him, I'm not sure which, and he happened to have 2/3 of the ticket, which is about over $600. He had cash on him, and he paid the ticket people in India at least 2/3 of the ticket. And they said, okay, we'll release you from the airport. We're just going to hold your luggage and your passport until the rest of this is paid. And in the meantime, about 4 of his pastors had come to the airport to pick him up. And he reported things to me like he had never felt hunger before like this. He had basically not really eaten well for 5 days. He did get fed on the Arab Emirates airline. So that was one meal. He'd been offered red meat products in Dallas, which he said very clearly he could not eat them. And so they made no effort whatsoever to feed him, despite the fact he told them that he's diabetic. So, and they said, oh, well, we're going to let you call the consulate. And then they told him before he was able to call it, they said, oh, no, there's not time. We're just going to put you on the plane and send you back. So we're not going to allow you to call the Indian embassy or the consulate, which again was not legal. It's not protocol. You know, the protocol apparently is to take anybody who's being denied entry and keep them for a while until they have other people from that area of the world to send them back on a similar airplane. But they didn't do that either. And so he gets back to India, and like I said, the pastors picked him up, and he was so weak, and he hadn't bathed in 5 days. He was so weak and feeling so bad that they had to hold him up in the shower to help him take a shower. And then they took him immediately to the hospital, where he was there for several days because they were trying to get his blood sugar correct. Now, in my opinion, I'm not a doctor. I didn't speak with the doctors. In my opinion, they could have killed him. So right now, he basically, after getting out of the hospital, and it did take several days, he went into seclusion to try to recover from this emotionally because he's been so traumatized. And he said that he was definitely being abused and treated as if he were a criminal. So this is just, it's so shameful. It is so shameful for us to have manhandled and abused and starved and almost killed someone coming to the United States on a goodwill mission for Americans and other people around the world who are being heinously abused by the deep state. And in my opinion, they did intercept and hear everything that we were saying and writing to each other, and they did put this roadblock in his way. That's my opinion as an ex-NSA analyst. So we owe him a debt of gratitude. His churches still continue to pray. And I think that, in my personal opinion, again, I think God basically said, I'm going to put you in touch with some of the best prayer warriors on the face of the earth. And we're tapping into that, and the deep state is fighting it, but they will lose. In my opinion, they will lose.
Yes, because it seems to me this is such an amazing travesty of justice, and this really should be front page news, that the TSA would deport somebody without proper communication or keeping to protocol. Because as you pointed out, Karen, we ultimately did get in touch with the consulate of India, and I did have a chat with a spokesperson for the consulate, and he detailed to me at great length what the protocol really is. If there is a suspicion that somebody has entered this country from India who is possibly an illegal alien, you know, quote unquote, that term, somebody who's gotten here without a visa, somebody who has some kind of criminal background or criminal intent, then TSA is supposed to call the embassy and present all the paperwork, all the documents, all of the information surrounding this particular person to the embassy. And they are supposed to go through the papers and issue either an emergency certificate, which is like permission for the TSA to deport this individual, or they would ask for consular access, permission to see and meet the individual. And they would send somebody from the embassy to go meet the person, talk to him, get his side of the story, see if they could be of assistance, and so on. Now, neither of these two things transpired because the TSA did not contact the embassy. So that's the basic break there in legality and procedure and protocol over here. They did not contact the embassy. They did not just call up and say, look, we have an Indian here, we have some concerns, and it's whatever. But they didn't bother to do that. So the Indian embassy, the consulate, pretty much gave me to understand that they were certainly very troubled by the story, that they were horrified to hear that this man was treated so badly, that he'd pretty much been detained in a kind of forceful fashion, and he'd not been fed. And they could clearly see that this was an extreme injustice. And I was actually very pleased to report that the embassy could see clearly the transparency of the injustice here. Mm-hmm. And, you know, as you said, Karen, it really kind of points to some very strange shenanigans on the part of the TSA over here, trying to stop this man from entering the country. So if anybody else has a comment on that, I'll just throw it open.
Well, and I would also like to thank Janet Phelan for actually delving into it as well. So we had multiple people calling and asking what in the world they were doing to this man.
Yes, that's wonderful. I'm so glad that Janet Phelan jumped right in and did an article right after, because, you know, this is the kind of thing that journalists should be covering today.
I absolutely agree. And you know what? I also think that it shouldn't stop there. I mean, you know, 2 articles have been written now, and that should be just the beginning of a big storm here. A big storm in journalism. I think also a big storm as far as foreign relations are concerned. Because the way I analyze the situation is that they do what they always do. The criminals at the top take absolute dumb thugs at the bottom of the food chain to do their dirty work. And what we have now is that, you know, a high-profile pastor who came with the best of intentions and who represents a very good community in India was not just snubbed, he was assaulted and he was nearly killed by a bunch of, you know, the lowest scum of the earth, absolute thugs who don't, you know, they obey orders, they know maybe how to, you know, follow orders, but they don't have a brain. No one does this to another person. If somebody says to you that they are diabetic, you take care of them. So this just reveals such a huge chain of absolute criminals who are in our systems and need to be washed out. And if anything, you know, I think this should make us really angry. I think anger is portrayed as something bad, you know, but actually, no, it isn't, because it kicks you into action. And we have got a right to be angry about that. And we should. You know, because this is an insult, not just to the pastor and his community, you know, because as he said, they treated him like a criminal. Who in their right mind decided to do that and think that they will get away with it? I think this is an insult to their community, right? And for that, we need to get angry. But I think it's also diplomatic insult towards India. And make a huge thing out of that. And if these Indian guys at the embassy have got any bollocks, they should make a big thing out of that in their own diplomatic, you know, Chardonnay drinking sort of way. But I think this is absolutely unacceptable. And I think every single time we have these sort of incidences, what we have is a group of organized criminals who've infested our systems, who've put absolutely lowest scum and dumb people everywhere into these positions. Right? Because all these guys at TSA who did that, they should be sacked. They should be on food stamps, and people currently on food stamps should have their good jobs. And the only condition for the application is not to be quite as dumb as these guys, you know, and we already would be better off. But I think a lot of people need to be sacked all the way. And I think if we, you know, I think we should turn this into system judo, use it as a massive stone of, you know, discontent here. And then we should really do what we have to do, which is recapture our systems. And the most important question to ask is always, who authorized this? You know, when you're dealing with these absolute gibbering morons at TSA, they behave like thugs most of the time when people just travel by airplane, you know. But when you have stuff like that and they are empowered, they are just, you know, nasty. And the question to them is, who is your boss? And who's your boss's boss? And where exactly did this command come from? Because it broke all protocol. So when it breaks protocol, there was some sort of instructions. And we need to track down an absolute thug of a criminal high up in the food chain, and he needs to be sacked, like literally now. And the entire diplomatic debacle that comes out of this has to literally rotate on his forehead. I really think so. Gosh, I'm so angry. I'm so angry about this because, I mean, first of all, you know, my family and we fled the communist system. So I've got my share of experience with these sort of border guard thugs. I mean, they are mostly criminals, but this just takes the biscuit, you know, and the pasta out of all things. And how can you possibly bring yourself to just mistreat a human being like that? You know, I mean, what is this? You know, Homeland Security? What's Homeland Security? You put all your criminals to the border facing outwards, so you're fine inside? Or what's the, you know, what's the plan here? Sorry, someone else take over because I'm seething, you know?
Well, it's called righteous indignation is what it's called.
Yes, and you know, as you said, Katherine, I think this story has to be followed up on. And I've been contemplating different angles, ways in which to pursue the story. And certainly I think I should go back to the TSA and try to see if I can find out more from the TSA. Now, of course, the TSA didn't bother to get back to me the last time I called and left messages asking about this, because, you know, Karen also was struggling to reach them and asking for a case number. And I believe they never did give you a case number, did they?
No, they refused.
Yeah, they refused to give you a case number. So you didn't have a case number to give the consulate. So this lack of communication from the TSA has set in motion the most grotesque, the most ghastly diplomatic horror that's, you know, ever transpired in recent times between the US and India, no doubt. And somebody needs to pursue it, and somebody needs to ask those hard questions. I would certainly like to talk to Pastor A when he is in better shape and get his side of the story and actually present his experience more cogently and clearly for the world to see. Because this is a huge deal. You know,
I have a suggestion.
None of us should sit back and take this from the TSA. I'm
Millicent,
sorry.
go ahead.
I have a suggestion. Aaron, is it possible for you to ask Pastor Cota if he is it possible for you to get to act on his behalf in the United States so that those hard questions can be in a legal arena?
You know, we're going to be still contacting and talking to some of the pastors, I think, that he was trying to see. Because it's very clear also that the deep state is controlling who has access to President Trump. And they don't want President Trump to know that this emissary had every intention of talking with him through people that President Trump already likes and has access to. So to me, that's exactly why they got rid of him. They scooted him out of the country and broke all kinds of laws and protocols doing it. You know, so it's very clear. I mean, the president himself should be upset, you know, because somebody else has taken it upon themselves to say, no, we're not going to let anybody see Donald Trump that we don't okay. Well, he's the president.
You know what, just if I may interject, actually, it also, I think they should get back to Donald Trump because it's a very serious matter because on the face of it, it looks almost like, you know, the command came from him. You know, it can be made to look like that. And how come some lowlife took the authority upon themselves to make the US look bad in the eyes of India and cause a diplomatic, you know, little debacle here? I mean, who on earth has the authority to cause something like that? And I think we should pursue it because we should actually, my opinion is always to take the perpetrators and learn from their methods because they are running a war of attrition and it's very effective. So we should do the same thing and we should just keep at it, literally just keep chipping away and just keep asking the same questions. So who authorized this? Who were the TSA agents on the ground? Who didn't give him any food? You know, who is their boss? Where did the command come from? And we just don't let go. We just ask this question every single week and into eternity if we must, until we have this cleared up. And until we have people literally sacked from their positions. Because I tell you guys, if we don't sack the criminals out of our systems, nothing will change. So we have to make sure that somebody loses their job for this. I really think so. And it has to be the right people, the right people have to lose their job for this.
And it is persistence and, constantly knocking on their doors. But, look at the situation, how it is. Look at how corrupt the entire scenario is, okay? So here we don't know who gave the TSA those orders. But given what we understand now as the deep state, especially if you look at Kevin Shipp's last talk, where he talks about the CIA and the NSA running the country, of course, compartmentalized sections of the CIA and the NSA, which many other people working there don't know about. They're running the country above and beyond the president, above and beyond Congress, So are they the people involved here? And they're shadowy figures. They're not the front, up and center named people whom we get to contact over here, who have phone numbers that we can call or who have email addresses we can write to. And then the other issue is we call them, we email them, they don't call back, they don't write back, or they're very rude when they talk to you like they were to Karen. They don't give you information, they don't give you a case number. That's the extent of the corruption that we are facing currently.
Yeah, I agree. And the question is, how do we take that and turn it into ammunition? And I think the way to do that is to systematically document how we're trying to follow the chain, because we know that the deep state and all these criminal organizations have a very rigid hierarchy. Very rigid. They're pyramid organizations. And this means that even though when you're at the bottom and you're surrounded by armies of these thugs, it can become overwhelming. But at the same time, when you're doing an investigation and you're going up the chain of commands, you actually have to go, every time you leap a level, there's very few people that connect, whoever made this decision down to the bottom. So we should start clawing our way up and go by name. And then if somebody refuses a reply, then we name the person who refuses the reply. And I promise you, the lower the people are, the less willing they are going to be the last name in the chain. They would much rather pass the buck, So if you're a TSA agent, do you want to have your name in an article forever on the internet? Or would you much rather just answer a phone and say, by the way, don't you want to talk to my boss so-and-so? Here's his number. And it will be a game of pass the buck if we just apply.
That's always assuming somebody answers the phone and actually takes that first message. Because I had the unfortunate experience of not being able to reach anybody. I left messages because nobody would pick up the phone.
I think what we need to do is, in most cases, because they pretend to be, the humiliation of a person is meant to be public, but the investigation, then they say, oh, this is all confidential or something, and only the person itself can actually initiate this investigation. So what we really should do is we should make clear to, the pastor in question how very important for the salvation of the US it is that we go after these criminals and we find out who they are, because they're going to strike again. So, he has to initiate it, and he can make an authorization that you and Karen can follow up his case from the US, from the inside. And then you can write letters. And I would always recommend to people, write physical letters and send them by registered post, because, as Millicent says always, and she is right, it becomes an official document, and then you can say, look, this was the last official document. It has reached them that's on that day, and they refused the information,
That's excellent advice. Yes, put it in writing at all times. Yes, absolutely. And what I would also like is to talk to Pastor Ray and see if he can indeed name anybody or give us more detail that will help guide us in terms of what direction to pursue this. Because we must pursue the story further and we must report it further. I think, in fact, the very reason that these guys tried to throw him out of the country, and in fact accomplished it the very same day, is because they just, and didn't contact the consulate, mind, is because, one, they wanted to completely stop the possibility of this occurrence happening, him meeting his friends and his friends getting together with President Trump, etc. One is to completely stop that, and two, to keep it out of the press, to keep it out of the news, to keep it out of anybody's awareness, so that, get rid of the evidence kind of story, get rid of the man, and then he's outside the country, he's off a plane, and it's just like he never came into the U.S. So there's no story. There's no story here. He never entered the country. He didn't go beyond the airport. So there's no story here, and go away, there's nothing to see here. So that, I think, is what we try to do. And this is where I think we did engage in system judo, perhaps our first step, Karen and I jumped in, pursued the story further, and I wrote an article. And that article is now on the internet for everybody to see and can be reproduced by anybody and reposted and reblogged anywhere with my permission. Please share it widely, because the intent is to spread this information. We need people to be aware that something major, very major, has happened here. The TSA deported an Indian pastor, and that's only the first half of the story. The second half of the story is this Indian pastor came with very important information. The TSA kicked him out of the country to keep that information from being disseminated widely to everybody, which the Washington Post, the New York Times, Vice, all of those other publications that are trying hard to suppress these stories of electromagnetic targeting are completely attempting to suppress from the American public. But this story has the potential to tell the entire country about about the reality of electromagnetic and sonic and scalar targeting and neuro weapon targeting of Americans in this country. And of course, as we know, this is a global phenomenon. So, and again, it's connected, obviously, because it's a global phenomenon, and we've talked many times about this. It's connected, obviously, to the whole globalist phenomenon of the globalist government that's trying hard to, get into power. That is never going to happen. Never. They're dreaming if they think they can go on with this scheme, this deadly scheme of genocide.
Well, they're also trying to suppress it from the Christian community in the United States as well as the world.
That too, exactly. And the Christian community, in its own way, has its own networks, does it not? Because it has its network of churches and prayer groups across the country. And those are the good people of America. Those are the people who have, morality, conscience, a religion. And of course, I don't mean just the Christians are the good people, but they are one faction of the good people in America.
Right.
And unfortunately, what we're living in, the horrendous sort of scenario that we're currently living in today, is we've got the fusion centers and DHS trying to convert good people to bad, setting communities against each other, holding up outspoken individuals and communities as monsters and scapegoats, and mobilizing whole communities against this one person. It's like Shirley Jackson's The Lottery, get together and stone one person at a time.
And this certainly would have convicted people who have been played for fools in churches and told that it's their Christian duty to harass somebody to the point of, I don't know what they're told, to move them out of the community or discourage their bad behavior. I'm not sure what they're being told. My suspicion is that there are several layers of harassers, one of which is being appealed to as patriotic and or perhaps moralistic Christian, and that maybe they're being told that they're just watching the person or they're just harassing them just enough to keep them from being bad. And then maybe they include people of lower moral character, lower financial success, into the more criminal aspects of the harassment. I mean, it's very possible some of the people are totally fooled and other people are well aware that they're murderers. So this would certainly enlighten a lot of the people who think that they're doing something patriotic or moral. And I did go on one of my sites and I created a bumper sticker and t-shirt that said, "Who would Jesus slander and stalk?" A play on what would Jesus do? So they've got to be told this. I mean, you cannot, and you cannot say that this is patriotic or Christian. You cannot.
And Karen, the other thing that they go around telling people, because many of us have heard these stories, they tell people that the person who is under scrutiny, under investigation, the person who's being hit with electromagnetic weapons, because everybody by now in our communities must know that electronic surveillance means microwave weapons, even though they're all gagged and you're not supposed to speak out. I think they know. I think they know very well, especially if cell phones are involved. That's pulsed Wi-Fi. I think they know very well. So one of the things that these people are told in our local communities is that the person under scrutiny is a pedophile or is a prostitute and therefore must be kept an eye on, is a child molester, is a child trafficker. In other words, these are the crimes that they themselves are guilty of. Our friends in DHS and the CIA and the NSA and all these other alphabet agencies. You know, our friends in high places who bribe congressmen, etc., and who are all engaged in this nonsense and this extreme evil, rather. Not just nonsense, it's extreme evil. And so they project and they name people who are being targeted as precisely those monstrous things that they are.
Yeah. No, they present us as what they see in their mirror. And I would tell people who are being paid to do this, you are working for monsters. You are working to keep the pedophile networks safe. How proud of this are you?
Right. I think this is fantastic.
That I found, and it's actually at a LinkedIn site that who has been harassing and torturing me this morning, because I had no idea. I mean, I've not been to this site before, but it talks about I guess sort of the insides of the stalking. And it says recently the infamous National Security Agency of the USA has developed a very efficient method of controlling the human brain. Technology is called remote neural monitoring and is expected to revolutionize crime detection. Remote neural monitoring works remotely, control the brain under the objective to detect any criminal thought taking place inside the mind of a possible culprit. I tell you that I am brain-to-brain linked with a person who is a reported use of sociopath.
Randall Webster, I would like to say. The person is Randall Webster, as I revealed it last week, and we tried to have him arrested with the FBI in Memphis and the FBI in Nashville, who are both, as it seems, criminal organizations who protect criminals. Sorry, continue, Millicent.
And any criminal thoughts in my brain is being sent to me remotely. Any reason to sit around thinking about profanity or killing people, because none of that is part of who I am, and my MMPI. But it talks about their ability to put thoughts in the brain that people can't see, but it's enough. And I know that for a fact because when I go to church on Sunday morning, the people to listen, a couple of police officers that are members of our church listen to their telephones all the time. Cell phones to whatever channel they're supposed to be able to monitor my thought processes. Being tortured, and my thought processes, my brain is being flooded with words from another resource.
You know what? I think actually now that we're talking about church community pastors and this sort of stuff, you know, I think what you just said, I want to connect up with what we said previously. And I would like to start with the other topic, because I have to say this entire story about the TSA, you know, deportation of this pastor makes me so angry. I think the only way we can really turn it into something good, because that's what we're about. We're about turning utter, you know, total nonsense into something good, is we have to do system judo. And system judo, for those who are new to this, you know, form of martial art, is you take the inertia and the weight and the power of your opponent and you turn it on them. A bit like normal judo, but you just do it with systems. And here, this person was suffering the overpowering might of the TSA and deportation system. And also look at the details, how they behaved like a mafia. There was racketeering, extortion of money, threat to life. This guy almost died. I mean, how can you tell the TSA apart from the mafia these days? You know, is it just a uniform? And I think this is what we have to do. And the way to turn it around is, because these people are in a big hierarchy, you know, big corporate this and that, and the TSA is also a corporation, we should find out who the CEO is and literally send it to him straight and say, you have just become liable for damages, for massive damages, for actual torture. You tortured the person for several days. They didn't eat. You know, this is CIA level torture. Now we're going to charge you, and you violated all the protocol, as we now can prove. So this means we'll just do what, you know, what one does with corporations. We're just going to sue you for damages. But it's going to be you, because you stepped outside the normal operations. So it must have been something that you took, you know, you hijacked your own organization to run a criminal operation here. You extorted money from private people, even though this sort of deportation is just charged, you know, to the general account. This is a private, you know, extortion exercise. So we will drag you into court. And the buck stops with the CEO of the TSA. And if he can pass the buck to somebody else, good on him. But we will start there. We will start at the top. And suddenly, it looks like this entire mighty organization has been turned into one mighty mafia. Now, what does that look like? You know, and these people have money. So, you know, let's go after the money. And I think, you know, the pastor should be compensated for the torture he suffered over several days, and that can benefit his community. And we should go after these corporations. Now we should go after them like a bunch of psychopaths, you know, literally tasting blood and not stopping. And then we will turn it into something good and our goal should be to extort money via damages from these criminals and give it to the community of this pastor. How about that?
Let's keep it in a morally sound. Let's go at it from a legal perspective. Advisable for us to get a lawyer who can write letters on that reimbursement. It's certainly to his advantage to include the airfare that was paid, as well as statements from those persons who provided or supplied monies that allowed him to leave the airport, and also to provide the medical documentation and surely the medical billing of what they did to him for those 5 days, and the condition they found him in when he returned to his country. Y'all know me. I'm just always in favor of even pronouncing our plans in a way that our integrity and verifies our morality. So I'm not ever of the opinion that it's to join the tactics of our enemies on the side of us doing it the right way, according to what man's, you know, the avenues that man has to take, so that we can make the best impact. I believe we can make the best impact for the long run by doing it just as I've suggested. Absolutely. And the only addition I have is that we also include a commercial rate for the torture he suffered. Absolutely. I mean, that's what I meant. I meant, you know, I didn't mean we're going to hire a bunch of, you know, a hit squad and then, you know, extort the CEO. What I meant is we're going to hire, you know, another type of hit squad, maybe a bunch of lawyers in suits, and go after the CEO. So, you know me, Millicent. I'm not advocating violence, but I am advocating a psychopathic determination to actually go after these guys, you know. And let's keep it in mind that we're doing it for the ones who are weaker than us, you know, for the people in India. And that's another thing, because there's an entire community, and I think they have got their own problems. So just imagine we have come today to this point where we have a community in India, you know, that by the snootier parts of the US is still considered, you know, a third world country as far as they know. Nevertheless, they are praying for human rights and the survival of Americans. Like, what has the world come to? And then the other thought I had is number one is, you know, as Millicent said, we will do court cases and go after this. We won't let go. And the second thing is, let's do another system judo, and let's reach out to all the Christian pastors, because to them it should be a wake-up call. How come we are at the heart of this modern war and none of the Christian pastors in the US or anywhere in Europe speak up? You know, these amazing pastors,
how come they don't preach every day that gang stalking is first of all, it's against the law, but it's also against moral law, you know?
You know, Catherine, that's a brilliant thought. And maybe we should pause there for just a minute, because we know that in America, the reason this is not covered in the press is because the press is gagged. And also the press is part of the propaganda machine. Press is part of the CIA. And we know people in public affairs are not speaking out because they are gagged. You know, communities are being gagged. So, shall we come down to pastors and churches now? Are they also being gagged? What is going on here? A pastor should lend an open ear when somebody in his ministry steps forward and says, look, this is what's going on in my neighborhood. This is how I'm being persecuted. And I think, because I've heard some stories from some of the people who are being targeted, you know, whom I've come across, who've told me that their pastors are listening to them, are very helpful and supportive to them, but are not speaking out openly just because of the political aspects of the situation.
I mean, what exactly for these pastors we should say? What political aspect? Like what type of politics? What political party advocates a genocide of the American people? Is that the Democrats? Is it the Republicans? Like, what's political? There's nothing political. This is just about fighting crime, you know?
Oh, I'm with you completely.
I know you're with me. I'm just saying this is what we should say to them.
A good place for me to talk about the conference call church. That's the church that I'm pastoring, and it's called Refuge from the Storm. The reason that the church was formed was because of the number of people in the target who has been ostracized out from their church communities. They have not found the support that they needed in the pastor at the church district. And very, 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 so Refuge from the Storm, in an effort to draw those people back into a spiritual community whereby we could still meet, we could still have church services, we could still have prayer times together, still feel that they are part of the spiritual community that they, you know, grown to love. I'm glad, Ramola, that you've told me that there are and is receiving that kind of support from their pastors. Great majority of them are not.
Yes, I agree with. I think you're right. I think the great majority of them are not. And actually, you know, Millicent, it might be also the moment to say that those of us who are being hit with these weapons are also hit inside church. Now, I have actually. Can we not, you know, agree on that? Because I think we've all experienced that.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So I don't regularly go to church anymore, but I've been to 2 churches. I tried very hard to become a regular member at 2 churches. And I was not merely hit inside the church. I noticed church elders walking to different parts of the church to target with greater ease and precision with their little iPhones, you know, pointing and hitting, standing right behind me. And, you know, the jokers here who hit, they tend to make hits from outside. They use, I think, long-range acoustic radar, which makes hits on heaters, on radiators. So when the hard knocks begin sounding on the radiators inside the church, and the cars begin honking outside because they can't quite track the target, and then the planes start flying over and the helicopters start flying over the church elders quickly scurry and start positioning themselves around the target to permit greater ease and precision of hitting. I've experienced this multiple times.
Oh, now I don't experience that, but what I started doing is writing on my whatever assaults I'm receiving while I'm sitting there. Proof of being, in a sense, because who else would know that I'm going to church? And why am I receiving these kinds of assaults at church? And they're the very same ones that I receive standing in a grocery store, sitting here in my home, or sitting in an airplane 30,000 feet in the air.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch it. Where do you write it, Millicent? Did you write it in your Bible or a hymn book or something like that?
No, I write it on the church program. Every Sunday we get a program. And so I actually write on the program all of the assaults I get while I'm sitting there. And I can hand those programs over and say, these are the Sundays I received this particular type of assault.
Mm-hmm. So let's underline this for all of America to hear. American churches are facilitating electromagnetic targeting on Americans. American churches, American pastors, American church elders are facilitating this. So we have to ask, how much hypocrisy is there in the church today?
Can I interject something about, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Jump in, absolutely.
Okay. 10 years ago when I was looking into this, there were 38,000 denominations of Christianity. And that means that there are 38,000, or there was 10 years ago, 38,000 different ways of interpreting whatever, and they couldn't join another church because they had a different idea. Also, during Jade Helm, I think there was 2,400 or 2,800 pastors that were working in the FEMA camps. And their job was, when people were brought into the FEMA camps, the women are separated from the men and separated to the children. The job of the pastor was to calm them down. Of course, they're going to be freaked out. So there's your united Christian community. I think to look at them as a united front is like looking at the other side as a united front. It's all like fragmented. And then every time we get into this Donald Trump thing, I just really want to remind you that this man is all over the logbook between the United States and Lolita Island. He's a frequent visitor to Lolita Island. That's Jeffrey Epstein's island. He had during the campaign multiple charges, and I read the charges. They're pretty graphic, of him doing things to these children in that island. Since he's been there, he's firebombed Raqqa. Now, this was a bold move by him. And I don't know whether you know about this white phosphate bombing, but what it does, it doesn't kill you. It burns your skin off. It's been outlawed by anybody that knows anything about war. It's the most horrible thing you can do. He did that. Also, there's 42 people in Guantanamo Bay. Now, the way the reporting structure is set up in Guantanamo Bay, there's a dual structure. One reports to Southcom, which is Southern Command, it's the normal. And then there's a direct line to the White House. It goes through the Secretary of Defense. And they have a weekly meeting to talk about Guantanamo and what's going on in Guantanamo. Mm. Now, there was a study done by Seton University. It's in the video that we made about this. The reason that they're doing this torture there, it certainly can't be to get information, because some people are tortured for 10 years. And it's been proven by Senate committees that torturing people is the worst way of getting information. So why are they torturing there? Well, according to the Seton Hall University study, they torture there to find out how much these prisoners can take. That's what it's all about. The breaking point of human spirit, the human physical body, and of course they use the Muslim texts. They're mostly Muslims, so they use Muslims, the Quran, to taunt them about their religion. So I think if you're counting on Trump to be your hero, I think you're going to find out that he's as much into this as anybody else is. And I do this every time we start talking about Trump aiding you.
Well, I think it's good that you brought it up. Yeah, I think it's good that you brought it up, Paul, because we can actually explore this a little bit further. I personally am not exactly looking for Trump to be my hero. I don't see any of these presidents as my hero because they're all, it seems, to some extent, marionetted by the deep state. Trump so far has seemed the least marionetted. However, everything that you have just stated is absolutely true, and I have problems with that too. And, is he the one who dropped the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan? That super huge 150,000-ton bomb?
Oh, the MOAB,
The
that's
MO
such a sci-fi. That stands for something else in their rollout of in their Freemason rollout of whatever the hell's going on here.
Yeah, so and that's the other.
Trump is playing exactly what they want him to do. He's playing the opposite of the Soros liberal thing. He makes the other pole. Look, this whole thing is about polarity. And unless you can stand outside of the polarity and watch it working, it's very difficult to see from inside because it looks like bad guys, good guys. So it's hard to see it from there. But
yes. The only thing I wanted to say though about Trump, the good thing about this whole scenario, had it come to fruition, had Pastor A met his friends, the Christian pastors, and been able to get an audience with Trump, to me, it appears to me there was a possibility there for this to be exposed just because of the gradations of exposure, through another group of pastors who have some influence, and then getting to the level of Trump. And so the question becomes, would that be hidden and covered up too, just as the TSA tried to cover up his arrival, by throwing
I don't know, and I think that's a good reason to get any kind of exposure. If we could get him to meet with Trey Gowdy, who I think isn't a pedophile. I don't know why.
But I think Karen has a lot to say on the subject, so let's ask Karen.
Okay, Karen.
Well, I'm going to say what, people have approached me, said they don't like Trump, et cetera, et cetera. I don't personally like Hillary. I think she's got a lot of baggage that is more heinous than we can imagine. So my first choice was not necessarily Trump. I really liked Ben Carson, and he didn't make it. But I will say, and this is what I tell people, I say, look, it's regime change. With one person, with a new president comes a lot of other people, a lot. And they get into new positions and they want to prove themselves to be excellent people, excellent workers. And they are going to be much more receptive to new ideas and to blowing the whistle or to correcting something than people who have essentially sat there for 8 years and become comfortable with the corruption and don't want to rock the boat. So whether you like him or not, and I would say to anybody who prays, pray that if he's not the person that we need, that he becomes the person that we need, because God can do that. But also bear in mind that we need to start, again, writing to all the new people in these new jobs, because people said, I wrote and nothing ever happened. Right, those people are now gone. Write to the new people because they have an interest in looking good and doing something. So I just say keep hope until it's obvious that he's not going to help us. I'm going to still hope, and I'm still going to work toward it. And we are leaving a paper trail with this man as well.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. As a systems analyst, what I would like to put into this is, first of all, what Paul says, I think it's 100% established that what Donald Trump is what the ex-general counsel of the World Bank calls an agent of the network of global corporate control. So to those who are new to this, the network of global corporate control is a cartel that has been rumored to exist for centuries, and now since 2011, we have actual, concrete, precise proof from ETH Zurich, a group of mathematicians and systems analysts who mapped out the entire control structure of 43,000 global corporations. That's just the corporate aspect, and found that 40% of them are part of a big fat cartel that acts as one entity. That is the cartel. Now, what's not said is that also owns governments, and that entity also owns organized crime. And in fact, organized crime is the most profitable branch that they have. Now, any US president and anybody in power, that includes the German president or any president, will be an agent of this superpower, because if they weren't, they would be dead. So right now we're in the situation where every single figurehead is an agent. For example, there's Angela Merkel, before I trample around on, on the US president only, there's Angela Merkel who does the upside down triangle with her hands ever since she's been in power. Now, what's that nonsense about? This is cartel signaling. It's cartel signaling. It means I'm part of the club. If she didn't do that, she wouldn't be chancellor. But now the question is, humanity has woken up since 2011, for those on the insides, to this cartel. We know who they are. We also figure out how they operate. And now the question is, how are we going to get back to sanity? And the only way is to recapture our systems, because what we are facing is one big fat, deep capture by organized crime. That includes the pastors who now seem to support organized crime. That includes church members who go to church and think that they can use church as a warfare zone, as a warfare training exercise, like Ramola said, or like Millicent reported. Those people have their head in a tangle. Church is not a war zone. It was meant to be a place of refuge. So what are they doing? Triangulating Ramola and hitting Millicent. So, but then how come the pastors don't speak out? And as Millicent reported, 2 pastors who wanted to confront the serial killer who's tormenting her got murdered. So the other pastors are scared. Now, what I want to say to those pastors is, of course, you're going to be scared if you're going to be alone, but you will win against the serial killer if you as pastors team up. You need to gang up on psychopaths, literally. You do not approach a psychopath isolated, because they go on at isolated targets. So what we see in these individual examples, we have to do in society as well, because these psychopaths have gone in. If Donald Trump wanted to do something, he could not. He could not, or he would be dead, right? His position is so powerful, it pays to kill him and replace him. So, yes, I haven't heard about the Epstein, Island stories, but that's what I would expect. As a systems analyst, I would expect any world leader, certainly the US president, to be, he wouldn't have gotten there if he hadn't been initiated and would have a control file as big as a bundle, so he will have that. Now, the question is, what do we do? To the outside world, he still has to portray an image. So we have to system judo on the image. That's where we have to pivot, and we have to force him, and we have to make clear, look, there was a pastor. I mean, how bad is it for your image if this thing happens on your watch? And some low-life TSA can embarrass the entire, US nation and cause a diplomatic incident with India, And I think that's where we have to start, I think. And then we also have to, the other thing is also that the entire US nation of 360 million is looking to one person to change the world. That's nonsense. Like 360 million people have to change the world, and then you tell the big guy what to do.
That's right.
So I also think we have to reach out. We certainly have to reach out to the pastors, and the pastors have a platform, and they have to tell their communities that this crime is just, it's not acceptable. It won't last, and also kill them. Sorry, that's all.
Right. No, it's true.
Mm-hmm. And in fact, what's going on, and I think that's something worth underlining too, what's going on right now is everybody is being silent. Everybody's being gagged. People in public life, people in Congress, state governors. Well, of course, you have a whole bunch of them inside that pyramid. Okay, when I mention governors or congressmen, a bunch of them are inside the Masonic pyramid, the Bilderberger pyramid, exchanging hand signals and whatever. They're all part of that dirty secret club where they don't mind killing other people, and in fact they want to, right? Because they're all part of the whole defense military industrial complex. They're making money off of it, etc., etc. Okay, so there's a large part of them inside. But then the rest of them, who may have some morality and some ethics and integrity, appear also to be gagged. Everybody is being gagged by this entire industry of secrecy that's being run by these security and intelligence agencies. Everybody's being gagged. And while they're being gagged, while good people of conscience in America are keeping silent, thousands of Americans are being assaulted and tortured in their beds, in the privacy of their homes, and everywhere in public. In cafes, in libraries, on the street. They are being assaulted with electromagnetic weapons with microwave weapons, with sonic weapons, with millimeter wave weapons. They are being burned alive, while the rest of America shuts up, stands by, and says nothing. This is an untenable situation. It has to end. You know?
It is, and it's especially shameful for the Christian community, in my opinion. It's especially shameful. And the people who don't have any idea what the Bible says and you claim to be a Christian, you're going to have to rethink that. Because if you think that torturing and helping the government kill wanton people is patriotic, you're out of your mind. You know, and let me tell you that in the book of Revelation, for those people who don't know, there are 7 letters to 7 churches. Each of these churches existed in history, but there were many more letters to many more churches that were not included in the Bible. What's so special about these 7 letters? It has to do with the fact that the book of Revelation actually does have to do with prophecy, and the 7 letters included in the book of Revelation are included in the order in which those letters would represent the future history of the Christian church. All right, the last 3 letters in the book of Revelation talk about 3 churches that exist simultaneously. The church that is right with God, the church that is full of hypocrisy, and the church that is spiritually dead. Okay, and I'm going to ask those Christians listening, which one do you belong to? Because if you are stalking and harassing somebody for the government, it's not the Church of Philadelphia. It's not the church that is right with God. And that is the name of the church this letter was written to. I'm not saying there's a Church of Philadelphia anywhere in the United States or the USA or the world right now, because a Baptist church that is to your east could be Church of Philadelphia, as where a Baptist church to your south could be hypocritical church, or it could be a spiritually dead church. It depends on the church. It doesn't depend on the sect. It depends on each individual church, and you are in control of that, not anybody who heads the church. So you need to re-examine and say, what is my church? Is it a false church, or is it a true church? And then you need to start guiding people in that church in the same way and tell them, are we hurting someone? Since when do we worship the government? Does the government coming and telling us to hurt someone covertly that they can't be bothered to file charges against for any criminal deed, is that really what we're about? Because that's not even legal, much less moral. So people in the churches have got to wake up, because the Bible does say that a lot of the people in the end, a lot of the elite, supposedly elite, meaning Christians, will be fooled. And are you part of those being fooled? So people need to wake up.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I actually think that I would also like to get on to another group of people who are also following leaders, and they also believe. They follow leaders because they believe. And they also have let us down. And that's actually the military. Yeah, you wouldn't actually associate the church with the military, but that's the same thing, because they follow leaders who preach to them or give orders, and they follow them, and they believe that they're doing the right thing. And so I want to do 2 things. I mean, I also wanted to mention the affidavit release in a moment, but I would like to, you know, kind of segue into what on earth to do about it, you know. And I think it's a good idea to, you know, every incident that happens, to just doggedly follow it up and always ask, who authorized this? You know, I think it's also a very good idea to reach out to the people with platforms like the churches and remind them what they stand for, and especially what they stand for in times of need, which would be now, I would say. So we need now the pastors more than ever. It's absolutely no good, you know, in good times to be preaching to people who are mostly good. I mean, the real work is actually preaching to when people don't want to listen. So these guys have to, you know, wake up. And then the third thing is the military, because I remind everybody what we're dealing with is 4th generation warfare, and we are in a war. We're being assaulted with military weapons. We are all, everybody is being assaulted with these military weapons. So how the hell to inform the military, right? And we tried, I mean, Karen, you contacted Army Intelligence, you know, and we contacted the FBI, and they did nothing. So now I thought, I remembered something that Karen Hudis mentioned. She said the military, so the generals are getting upset that their soldiers are on Facebook and Twitter and on social media, because there they can get access to other information that's not coming from their preachers, as in their generals, and suddenly they wake up. So, you know, I had this thought in the back of my mind, and I would like to share what happened to me on Saturday, because I'd never intended that to happen. To be honest, I was writing up my court case in the form of the affidavit, which I'll talk about in a moment. But the following thing happened. When I first decided to go public, and I made a Twitter page, agents, which looked like agents from British and German intelligence, made fun of me on Twitter. And they, you know, as soon as you open a Twitter account, if somebody immediately follows you, that's, as if you are a targeted individual, that's most likely an agent who wants to monitor you. One of the earliest agent accounts that followed me had an image of Dr. Strangelove. Now, and they were ever so polite and trying to feed me useful information, but that's what agents usually do. They kind of like feed you useful information with one hand and they mock you with another. And then this agent, who had also completely new account, recently made, just like when I made my Twitter account, was feeding me useful information, and at the same time their profile image was Dr. Strangelove. Now, I have a PhD, and I kind of suspected at the time that that was a joke at my expense. So I just clicked on this profile and I thought I'll explore a bit more. And this profile had only a single follower, and that follower was a very big account that had thousands of people that followed in turn. And, you know, I said to this account, oh, by the way, did you notice that as soon as you made your account, one account started following you? And this account replied to me and said, oh, yes, I did think it was really strange. And I said, well, as far as I can make out, that account who's following you is, it is an aggregator account of British intelligence. Simply because that account had been in existence for a very short time and had accumulated thousands and thousands of accounts that it was following. You know, when you have to add accounts like almost at machine speed, you know, or at a ludicrously high rate, or you're following thousands of accounts. I mean, your Twitter feed would be just like, you know, rolling through, you know, if you got the messages from all these people. Guess what happened? This account got deleted like poof. Next time I refreshed my screen, the account was deleted. So I was like, okay, that was right. Now I'm writing up this for my court case, this entire incident. And I thought, oh yes, and this account from British intelligence was called G and then JON 777. Now at the time, I only began to figure out that the number 7 was kind of relevant in intelligence speak, you know, but 777 to me already smelled like, you know, intelligence. And then G, I now know to be the 7th letter of the alphabet. So that account had 4 sevens. So, you know, there seems to be some kind of grading based on the number of 7s. So whatever, this nonsense. So today I was thinking, let's just go back and try to find that account on Twitter again that, you know, I had looked at. And I would like to show you the account. And I would also like to show you what I found just so very, very peculiar about it. Hang on, I've got a bunch of, let me bring it up. So I'll show you the entire sequence, because then you maybe, hopefully, also understand a bit more about Twitter space. Okay. So here it is. Now, this is the account. Let me share my screen. I am going somewhere with this, guys, so just bear with me. So this was the account that I called an aggregator account for British intelligence. Because if you look at it, it was founded or joined in April 2010, yet it's following 11,700 accounts. Try following 11,700 accounts, guys. You know, I mean, you will be on Twitter most of your day. And then I thought, now they changed the username as soon as I openly, out loud, remarked on the fact that this was actually, it used to be G and then JON 777. Now the account name got changed. When I clicked on this and when I saw these follower numbers, I was like, right, that's an aggregator account of some British people. And then I have to say, I looked at this image and it looked just like Sir John Scarlett, head of MI6. He's wearing glasses on some images. You can Google his face and find out. And, you know, I looked at this and I was like, okay, that's what it looks like to me, guys. And then there are the 4 7s in the username. And then look at this background of the profile. It's like we evolved from monkeys to humans, and now we're becoming a barcode. That really disconcerted me. I was thinking, oh, yes, well, there's somebody here who really knows the program. Now, okay, so what happened last Saturday is that I came back to this account and I wanted to write it up for court cases, you know, and especially the story with Dr. Strangelove. And also, you have to know that in the film, Dr. Strangelove, this guy has got, his arm moves by itself. Okay, and there's funny scenes where he's got this fight with his arm. It's his left arm that moves by itself. And what the intelligence agents did with me is they chipped my arm, and there's probably nanotech in there, and they can move my left arm. They made it vibrate and so on. So I think in their world, they want to make me like Dr. Strangelove or something like that. So, you know, some bullshit. So I'm writing this up for court cases. I get back to this British Intel account, aggregator account, and then I got distracted like you procrastinate. So I started scrolling down and looking at all the tweets. And suddenly there was a tweet by Colonel Richard Kemp, and that annoyed me so much. I had to reply straight away, and that kicked off something really big, because I think at some point he was tweeting how, thank goodness, most of the, or something like most of the terrorists who pull off, you know, terrorist events in the Western world are just really stupid, or something like that, you know. And I thought that pissed me off so much. I immediately tweeted, actually, by the way, most of the jihadis in Europe and in the US are trained by the CIA and MI6 on how to put on a show. Like, literally, like, what are you on about, man? You know, don't you know that these are all false flags? Have you ever been online? Do you know what the internet is? I mean, we all know these are false flags. Yet we have this like British, you know, army dude pretending like we don't know. It annoyed me so much. But what really annoyed me, and now looking back at him, I want to show you his Twitter profile, because this is what set me off. So when you go to his Twitter profile of Richard Kemp, Colonel Richard Kemp, you see this, like a blood red ground, you know, background. And then here, you know, this thing, this blade. And then I called it a knife. And then he was like, no, dear, it's a bayonet. And all his mates were like, ha, 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 you didn't know, it's a bayonet, not a knife. Ha, ha. And then literally there's this like Twitter back and forth about them mocking me that I called this, which frankly looks like a knife, because you don't know what's coming, you know, further down. And oh, apparently this is a logo. But my brain looked at blood, knife, as in kill, and a bastard. And it literally just passed, kill the bastard. So I just went for him online on Twitter. Now, at first, this might seem like a stupid idea to pick a dogfight with a, you know, retired colonel of the British Army. But then I tell you, and this is why I suggest this as a solution, look at what did to my Twitter activity. So this is me not tweeting at all, and people check into my tweet website, you know, sorry, my Twitter site, and then suddenly I pick a fight with this guy and I get 60,000 impressions. And when I stop talking to this guy, I still get 50,000 impressions or 45,000. This was amazing. Like, this little, you know, argument with this guy was the best thing I could have done for Twitter outreach. It's amazing. And I'm actually advocating this as something to do, for us to do, is to just confront these guys on Twitter and call out their bullshit. Literally, and have a proper argument with them. Because I realized what happened is that people thought it was either totally impertinent or totally rude, but they kept retweeting.
That's terrific, Katherine. Now the question is, how exactly do we find them on Twitter?
I think, so the way I found it is that, you know, I went to what to me looks like an account by British Intel. And what British Intel does is they promote their own guys. So you get through to these
so you see who's promoted in the feed. That's a brilliant kind of way of doing it. Exactly. So you could just go to any of these, like the DARPA feed or, you know, the NSA Gov feed, and see who they're pumping up and profiling and highlighting.
Exactly.
And kind of do a little digging that way.
Yeah, because they're like a little clique, like at school when you had these girls just all in a one clique, like, you know, loving each other and thinking they're great. They're just like that, and they just love to promote their own tweets.
And
And
you know,
then-
they're also promoting their own BS, as you pointed out, that stuff about, you know, the jihadis all being Islamic and, you know, the Muslim maniacs, etc., etc. This is what they say, and I've seen some of those tweets. The radical Islam terrorists. I mean, what was it? Was it yesterday that Donald Trump went to the UN and he made a special point of underlining the radical Islamic terrorism that we all have got to stand up against? So you see, that's the party line that the entire defense industry is using as big, bad cover to keep building up the arms, you know, to pour the billions into the war machinery for. It's the radical Islamic terrorists. So it would be kind of interesting to actually confront them on home ground with language and actually get through to them and say, you know, we know that you guys have created this monster. The CIA has created ISIS and Al Qaeda. The CIA is running drug trafficking and child trafficking businesses. We all know this.
Absolutely. And then somebody said to me something like, oh, well, don't waste your time because you can't change a psychopath. Of course you can't. But for me, it's not even about Colonel Richard Kemp. I mean, who cares? It's just one guy. It's about his Twitter list. It's about who is following.
Exactly. It's the Twitter list. Yeah. So you get to, even though I bet you anything, I bet Twitter sort of manipulates that, just like Facebook and YouTube manipulate, you know, whose videos are highlighted and where they end up and whose feeds they enter and stuff like that. They might be manipulated, but on the other hand, there's a possibility that some of it might not filter through, right?
Well, it's not a bad idea either to contact veterans or veterans groups and try to tell them what's going on and say, and remind them, didn't you take an oath that said something about, domestic terrorism?
Oh, yeah.
Are you, you know?
Good.
I
And
think
remind
that's
them.
an excellent thought, the oath. You know, remind these guys of the oaths they took. I mean, don't they all take oaths? Doesn't the FBI take oaths?
They did.
Yes.
They did.
The FBI, the
In fact, Karen
Yeah, I
listened
mentioned that.
Karen listened.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't cover
in her
all the
petition. I was
oaths.
very glad.
Right. I didn't mention all of the oaths, but yes, everybody who goes into service has some kind of oath. I mean, I did.
And judges, they take oaths too, oaths of office, right? And they all swear to uphold the Constitution and to look out for the American people. I forget the exact wording, but their job is
Essentially.
to protect and uphold, right? Something like that.
Yes.
And look at what's going on. They're destroying America and they're attacking the American people. So I think Katherine's tactic here of getting on Twitter and connecting with them every now and then is brilliant. You know, that actually gets some leverage here for this very important cause of informing the world of the reality of electromagnetic and sonic targeting. So you see, all that nonsense, and by the way, we never really did talk about Cuba and the stories circulating and the fake news media about Cuba and so forth. But that whole issue of the sonic weapons, you know, sonic weapons have been revealed here in the midst of the targeted community for decades already. And all of a sudden, a couple of articles pop up now about US diplomats in The Guardian and the New York Times and so forth, and everybody starts talking about it in terms of how could it be? And did you all see that article, the Guardian article about the mystery deepening about the sonic weapons? The mystery. It's so mysterious. And the CIA and the FBI quoted in that article as being positively confounded about these reports of sonic weapons, because they've never heard of them.
Well, this is our opportunity to link what we're experiencing with something that's in the newspapers and can't be denied. Now, yes, you know, some kind of feeble article came out afterwards saying, oh, a couple of psychologists say, oh, maybe these people are just imagining this. Right. You know, the Canadian and American embassy people are all delusional. Yes. Mm-hmm. So that kind of fell on its face. That was laughable, but we can also point to that.
Yeah.
Say, how probable is this?
Yeah. And what did Millicent just say? It got cut on my end. What did you say, Millicent?
That would make them delusional.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a diplomat and you experience this, it's real. But if you're a citizen and you experience it, no, you're delusional.
Yeah.
If 50 people in Cuba experience it, it's real. If 10,000 people or 100,000 people experience it in the United States, that makes it unreal.
It's a mass delusion. Do you not know? The DSM probably has got a big old entry for that. The mass delusion of the sonic weapon.
I think you should realize.
Doctor, I have my hearing test signed by a doctor that says I have lost hearing in my ear on the side where I have chronic, what they want to call tinnitus.
Induced tinnitus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you should realize, all team, how much legs you've given this topic. People know about this stuff. Now, it might be just the awakening community, but there's a lot of people. We get emails all the time, and like this guy in New Zealand who's working on people that are subject to this. You're getting a lot of information, and this Twitter thing, this is brilliant, Katherine. Just pick on anybody till they throw you off.
I tell you, it's
awesome.
and you know what, I didn't even tell you the end of the story because it's even better. Like, poor Colonel Richard Kemp, he wasn't clever enough to figure out that, if a little girl is sniping with a sling at his forehead, he should be careful, just coming, being too grumpy, because there might be more behind it. And this guy was brilliant. I mean, I did provoke him. I did call him all sorts of names. So he was, I'm not saying he's a nasty guy, because he just dished out like he received. But then it was wonderful because in the end, he put in writing the following thing. And given that he does have duties as an experienced military man, what he said, and given the gravity of our situations, I was thinking at the time, oh boy, this is going to ricochet so hard into your testicles, you've got no idea. But literally what he wrote to me, and I would like to share my screen again and show you, is one of the messages. In the end, I said, well, you clearly don't know what you're on about. So I said, maybe at Colonel Richard Kemp and co, you can watch the Techno Crime Fighters Forum this Thursday, which is today at 4 to 6 p.m. and tell us how to fight the directed energy weapon attacks in Britain. And he says, no, I think I'll spend the evening doing something more interesting, like watching paint dry. And I had to take a screenshot of this because I was thinking, I just told you there are military weapon attacks on your people in Britain, and as a military leader, you put in writing that you'd rather be watching paint dry. And then this guy, Philip Ingram, here, I can show you how he replied, because that guy is, this guy claims to be a journalist reporting on security and intelligence issues. And he wrote, I prefer a nice bottle. It cracked me up. These people actually put it in writing. And then, because he hadn't dug deep enough, Colonel Richard Kemp then corrected himself and he said, cancel my last, I'm staying in to wash my hair. Your ladies will understand that. I mean, that was priceless. It was absolutely, I could not have provoked this guy into embarrassing himself any more than that, because he started off with essentially dereliction of duty, because I think as a military man, he will continue to have duties towards his country. When she just abrogated in print to watch paint dry, and then he has to insult women. He has to add a, slightly misogynist remark, although it was kind of sweet and quaint. I understood the joke, so we shouldn't, trample on him too much. But still, he wanted to insult us as women. And isn't it so embarrassing that here our team is all women and we're fighting a military problem? None of us are trained in weapons or, the form of, art of war, blah, blah, blah. All these men are, and they actually put in print that they would rather wash their hair. We have to take this and turn it into currency,
Well, Katherine, right now that he's sitting there watching us, don't you?
Hope so.
I bet you if he didn't run to to his computer and run to Ramola D reports this morning, 11 o'clock, and of course 4 o'clock UK time, I would be very surprised. And if he didn't do it, I bet some of his friends have actually egged him on and brought him on here right now to enjoy the show. Because I'll tell you what it really says is these guys think it's a bloody laugh. They're just having a laugh. This is British humor at its best or worst. They're just having a laugh. They're just having a laugh while people are being mutilated by their own kind, by their own military kind. The military.
Look at it this way, Ramola. The way they do these things is they do ignore, ridicule, and admit. Look at what they did with chemtrails. They ignored it, then they made fun of us, and then now they admit it. Oh yeah, we do it, but that. So that's, if you can push them into the ridicule stage, you've accomplished something.
You're actually moving along that curve, because the next thing is the admission.
That's right.
But is it going to be
next thing?
Is it going to be an admission like Obama standing in front of the press corps of America and saying, "Oh well, we tortured some folks"?
No, well, no, it'll probably be like what they did. Harvard admitted that we do geoengineering, and it's for the planet. It's for the best of everybody. And we really needed to do it. So it'll come out of a university. Yeah, it'll come out of one of these universities that, yes, we do this. Yes, we have used energy weapons, but we needed to do it to try it out. These people were, we reviewed them as a day. I don't know how they'll do it.
Well, you see, that's exactly what we want to challenge completely and absolutely on its face, head on, Paul, because, you know, that's exactly what they do. They do come afterward and say, oh, maybe we did it. And, you know, what they do is they expose a fraction of what they did. Right. And then they wrap up that fraction very nicely, you know, in oilcloth. So it's a big fat lie. It's just a whitewashed narrative. That's what they put out there. And it's all in an effort to gain the consent and gain the quiescence of the population, you know, the docility of the population and the acceptance of the population. But in reality, we are here to spell out for the entire world, really, for all of humanity, that what is going on is absolutely execrable. And, you know, I realize, and just thinking about it, we've been talking a great deal about directed energy weapons being used in all of that, electromagnetic and sonic weapons. But, you know, the other half of that equation is the neuro weapons, the neurotech, the voice to skull, the extreme abuse that V2K victims are being forced to endure. And that's in connection also with what Millicent brought up earlier, the remote neural monitoring, the pre-crime monitoring, and the manipulation of brainwaves and manipulation of people's brains. So, you know, that's actually a large topic in itself. And maybe next time, maybe when my next article comes out, which, you know, I'm doing this incredible interview with somebody who is a voice to skull victim and who is very articulate, highly eloquent, and whose words I think everybody in the world needs to hear. So maybe that article will be done by next week and we can, you know, focus on that subject a bit more.
I think it's, yes, absolutely. I mean, I also want to, by the way, I want to share my screen and I want to point everybody, all those people, hopefully, you know, half the British military who's hopefully finally listening, right? Or else I have to pick on a colonel, I think, every week or something, you know, just to widen the reach. But everybody who's new to this topic, please go to everydayconcerned.net. everydayconcern.net. That is Ramola's site, the Everyday Concerned Citizen. And this is the only media platform I'm aware of here, you know, that's bringing out article after article after article, all to do with the assault against the civilian populations in the Western world with directed energy weapons, with neurotech, with nanotech, and many, many other topics. So UN Agenda 21 is on here and lots of stuff. And also, this article about the Indian pastor that was detained and deported by TSA is here on the front page. But you will find tons and tons of information. And also on Ramola D reports, you can find even more information on
right, the podcast. Yeah.
The podcast, exactly. So where this is broadcast from, all the interviews, because I think people need to realize that we are now in a totally new situation. Because the police forces are entirely in deep capture. So the police forces are in deep capture. The courts are partially in deep capture by organized crime. The FBI doesn't do anything. And the army is actually following orders, not from their you know, governments, not from governments of sovereign countries, but from this organized crime cartel known as the Network of Global Corporate Control. You know, and everybody in the army and in the military in general has to understand that when they're going out and are fighting wars, they're not fighting wars for the US or for Britain. They're fighting wars for an organized crime cartel that's doing countrywide asset stripping. And I think that's quite a lot to take in for some soldiers who are totally new to this topic, because what it means is if you go into war and you get your limbs blown off, you got them blown off in the service of organized crime. How does that feel? And that's why it's so hard to tell these veterans that they've been lied to, but they have been lied to. And they will not stop unless they wake up. They will not stop the killing. And I think, guys, we need a deadline. And I was thinking hard of what sort of deadline we should have. And so our next projects will be preparing. We'll be preparing court cases and so on. And I would like to talk about the affidavits and how to bring out these horrific, heinous crimes actually in greatest detail. Because, you know, as you, Ramola, and Paul, you were just discussing, are they going to just admit to it, you know, and say, yeah, we've done it and so on, and they'll just come out and do a press release or something, or stand up in Congress? No, they should do it in court. They should do it under cross-examination. That's what they should do, literally. And then they should pay compensation to all the victims. That's how it has to be this time. You know, none of this, oh, Harvard admits, you know, on their website or some nonsense. Like, no. We're talking about serious criminal damages. So, you know, serious damages have to be paid. But, you know, as I was looking around, I came across the following thing, which I find quite mind-blowing. So, you know, talking about British intelligence and Sir John Scarlett, as I was looking for an image of him with glasses to check if he really looks like on that Twitter profile, I came across this image, which actually shows General Michael Hayden and Sir John Scarlett in the same image. And these people are giving a speech, they're giving a talk on Friday, January 19th next year. And if you look down, this will be, you know, it will be, there's somewhere a map, and this is next to Los Angeles somewhere, you know. So anybody who can make it out to LA next January, on January 19th, really should go to this talk. And literally my idea is, I mean, my goal in my heart and soul should be that by January 19th, we should have an arrest warrant for each of these guys. General Michael Hayden, he was responsible for literally the deep capture of NSA really nosediving, you know. And I think this is correct me, Karen, if I'm wrong, but I thought that it was, you know, generally understood in NSA that when General Michael Hayden came in, everything went south. You know?
Oh, yeah. He actually promoted someone in NSA security to operational head who has pretty much proven to be a psychopath. And under this particular man that he promoted, a friend of mine who was in charge of intake of job applications was told, don't weed out anybody who has mental issues or a criminal background, because NSA security wants to see their resumes. So there goes the NSA security morality. They basically embarked on hiring psychopaths and criminals under General Michael Hayden.
Wow. And you know, I think that's exactly what I expect to be deep capture by organized crime to be like, and what to look like. And that's just this one guy. And then when we go back and we look at the other guys, so maybe the viewers in America don't know who this is. Sir John Scarlett. I think he was on the, the Joint Security What's It meeting. Anyway, he was on this meeting of Intel personnel before the Iraq War, where they cocked up the dodgy dossier claiming that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, even though everybody knew. So that clearly includes also the head of MI6 knew very well that Iraq didn't have any weapons of mass destruction, and none of this was actually true. So what followed was that Britain engaged in the war in Iraq, and therefore I think this guy, because of his lying and this recommendation from that committee, as I understand it, was signed off by, amongst others, him and also Sir Richard Dearlove, who was head of MI6 before him. And I think this led to the murder of millions of Iraqis. And I think if we now, based on what we know about the organized crime cartel and its entire Illuminati and human sacrifice nonsense, we can go back, look at the images of utter devastation of cities, And, famine that they brought on, entire groups of people, cutting them off and whatever goes with war, and just destroying cities and homes and murdering people and all that. And was it the deaths of 800,000 Iraqi children? I have to update the numbers, but they're so horrific. I can't comprehend them. And that war literally looks to me like one big human sacrifice, like one big genocide. Because the truth is, we all now, as targeted individuals, know they've got such precision weapons that if they wanted to, not a single civilian would have to die. Literally, they can survey the field. They know exactly who's who. This is nonsense. It was basically they carted out their most destructive weapons to terrify the entire world with their murder and mutilation of people, because that's what they do, and they get off on it, And it goes back to what Paul, what you said about Guantanamo Bay. It's that torture chamber. Of course, it has no national security, function, and to me, it's a porn factory. They want to see most horrific things done to these people, to the prisoners, and film it, and then it seems to be shipped straight to the White House. For late evening viewing. That's what it looks like to me. And it's absolutely sickening. But what happened to the Iraqis is also sickening. And I think we have to hold these people accountable,
Well, you have to remember that before the Iraqi war, we had them under, what was it? Restricted trade. You know what it's called. We had them
sanctions
locked down. Yeah, so they couldn't get chlorine. So there were thousands of kids dying of
cholera
exposure.
Cholera.
Exposure every month. But we sat here under Clinton, fat and happy, didn't say a thing, and then they moved it forward. So this has been going on for a while. I think that remembering is a big thing, and I don't know how we can help this. But there were a lot of things done in the 60s and 70s with mind control that they're denying happened. And that was 50 years ago.
Oh, yes. Continuing to keep it in front of the public memory is very important.
Yeah, how do you do that? Like we watched Hurricane Irma come up the Florida coast. Well, back in the 70s, people would write in and talk on talk shows. Are they seeding this? Are they pushing it toward there? This is in the 60s and 70s we would talk about this. They knew they've been steering hurricanes since then. Now we have HAARP. We have weather as a weapon, documents. But it's not talked about because it's out of the public consciousness. We don't know we can do that. We've been able to do that for 50 years that I know about. But nobody said, oh, why don't they pull a plug on Irma or head her up the coast? They could have done that very easily. But no, now we're all, oh my God, let's get out of the way. Let's evacuate 6,000 people again, because we don't remember what's going on. This mind control, this program that you guys are in now has been going on since 1953 on paper, funded. You're just at the end. So to show that it's going on, we shouldn't need to show that it's going on. I mean, it should be obvious that it's going on. It's been going on for, well, we should be just highlighting the new weapons, how they're doing it. But we can't even get into the press. We can't even get anybody that's supposedly associated with any media that'll get to 100,000 people. But I think the strategy with Twitter and Facebook, and I know they're going to censor you doing this, but that's probably a good tactic to just cause, until we get attention, and then what they're going to do, I'm telling you what they're going to do.
Yeah, I know.
Say, yes, we had to do that. Millicent was the da-da-da-da-da-da, and she was playing a key role in da-da-da-da, and we had to get... I'm sorry.
Sorry, we're going to have to mobilize a mass movement to give them one in the eye for even coming near that thought. You know,
Ramola, I love it. One in the eye.
One
Yes,
eye
one
is
in
great.
the single eye. You know, I think humanity has to rise up, and this is what we're all about, Paul. I mean, we're not going to be satisfied with anything less.
Good.
Literally, we are at a turning point for humanity. I say this all the time. I may be sounding like a broken record, but I do think we're at a turning point for humanity. This technology is so invasive. It's so utterly invasive of the human body and the human brain. So I think everybody in the world needs to know what this technology is,
Right.
what it's capable of doing, what it's already doing. And, you know, people need to say, and we need to have a public debate the world over to say, do we want remote neural monitoring? Do we want pre-crime? Do we want these military guys who have no morals and no spine to go around tormenting women and men and children, keeping them up all night, waking them up 5 times a night, just by sending a brainwave to their brain, you know? And do we want people to be tormented with the voice to scar?
That's supposed to be the sonic wave, or like the sonic wave that they were talking about in Cuba. Across the screen.
Yeah, we see it.
Yeah. What is it?
Supposed to be the sonic wave, or a representation of it that was going at the U.S. diplomats in Cuba to the symptoms that they were reporting, like the ones we have. It says the attacks seem to come at night. Several victims reported they came in minute-long bursts. Cases, the victims didn't hear or feel anything before their symptoms began. Afflictions has expanded to include brain swelling, nausea, severe headaches, problems, and tinnitus, or prolonged ringing in the ears. The State Department announced that 2 more Americans have been added to the list of victims that now includes 21 cases. Are those not the symptoms that we experience?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, exactly.
But I was just fascinated. Go ahead, Karen.
No, I'm saying, but we're imagining it, but 21 people in Cuba are not.
They call it.
Right.
But I was just amazed that they actually had captured what that sonic wave looks like. And so, Ramola, what if that's what it looked like at church when those 3 men cornered you? The person is holding up a cell phone, coming from their cell phone?
Yes. Yeah, you know, I thought they were using their cell phone in church to track and to triangulate and to find that perfect GPS spot where, you know, you get a location, an XYZ location.
Karen, I'll forward this article to you.
Well, that's some of what I thought as well. When I would go out with some friends to a restaurant, and I would insist on sitting at the back of the restaurant with a lot of people in between us and the parking lot, where I knew that people would have the directed energy weapons. They would send people in to stand near our table and triangulate with cell phone locational abilities. So to me, that's part of it. Now, I'm not going to tell you I'm an expert. I'm not. This is just my assessment of what they were doing because I saw it several times. If I would get in a location that they could not really see from the car, then they would send people in with cell phones to, you know, sit there and say, okay, this is location, this is where I am, latitude, longitude, blah, 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 and then leave. So why would you come into a restaurant and hit stuff on your phone at the back of the restaurant and then leave? Why?
You know, they're trying to triangulate a line of sight location. And it seems to be they have some kind of line of sight app on their little cell phones, and they come and stand right next to you if they can't quite get you. And then somebody else will come and stand next to you in at a diagonal and do something on their cell phone. So it just seems to be so connected.
Yes.
Yeah. It could also be that the thing. There were these type of chips. I think I'm getting echo from someone. So there were these type of chips that I read about where they wanted to make the inventory in big places like Walmart really easy, whereby you send an electromagnetic pulse and these little RFID chips charge and then send an echo back. And then you can really figure out what products you have and where in the store. And, you know, this way you can do a really fast inventory. But in principle, you can, I don't exactly know what technology we have in our bodies as chips, but what it could also be is that people come close to you to charge the chips you have already on you. And then from the chips re-emitting, you know, they can not just map you out where you are, but the precise location of your heart, you know, by just reading out chips on, you know, two shoulders and so on, and calculate it. And I think what they're using is something really sophisticated. And either way, what's being done to victims is some sort of huge global war exercise. And the question is, what is this global war on civilian populations for? And it looks like one big staged Holocaust, you know. And I really think we have very little time to stop all this. And if you want to stop it, we have to get people like, you know, Colonel Richard Kemp to take us seriously and realize he can be, you know, bleating what he likes on Twitter. But when it comes to it, we have to do something in the real world. And that's his job. You know, it's his job and his mate's job, as much as it actually would be Andrew Parker, head of MI5's job, to look after national security in the UK. But he does the complete opposite. And the question is, we're talking about how on earth to bring this to the fore. And if I may, I briefly want to suggest the following about the affidavits. So I announced on my YouTube channel in the beginning of the week the release of this affidavit template draft. And to explain what this is about, so we're preparing court cases in a desperate attempt to stop this Holocaust globally. And we would like to explain, first of all, we would like to testify to the world and to judges and court cases of what's being done to us. And we had the idea that we have to be fast and we have to help each other, because yes, there are some corrupt judges and they will be blocking court cases, but we'll try over and over, and there are lots of honest judges as well. And we have to find a way to take our cases, which involve so many violations. They literally, you know, break open any criminal code most of the time. And the question is how we're going to get it across to judge what has been done to us. And my idea was that we all write testimonies, witness or victim testimonies, or affidavits, notarized affidavits, and we structure it such that we all agree that we put, for example, our testimony about stalking we've suffered into the same section, so the same number of section. And maybe we subdivide it into the same number of subsections. So whoever thinks that this is a good idea, please join me. I'll show you the affidavit in a moment. But just to explain, the entire program set up by the intelligence agency seems to be to assault victims with such a large number of offenses. So I just had, by the way, a new break-in into my cellar in the last week. So people broke into my cellar, wrapped an extension lead around the door so that I couldn't open it. And when I finally got into my cellar, I realized that they had taken some sort of, you know, whatever, and drawn, so like a template, and drawn the name of some alcoholic drink onto the floor of my cellar, onto the cellar boards. Then a couple of days later, they broke into my, they break in, by the way, every time I leave the house. So as soon as I go shopping, they'll break in. The newest thing they did is they came into my bedroom, and I filmed this, by the way, and I'll upload it. With a razor blade, they have cut up the wallpaper on my bedroom wall. And this is the sort of psychopathic stuff. So imagine you come back and you realize someone with a razor blade went up against the wall of your bedroom like a maniac. So of course the association is, whilst you sleep, you might come in and with a razor blade, for example, cut your throat, and you're meant to get horrifically upset about this. But this is just to explain the psychopathy of what we're dealing with. So if you just went to the police and said someone came into my bedroom and cut up my wallpaper with a razor blade, they might claim that you're mad or that you did it yourself. However, if you then combine it with all the other offenses like high-level hacking or the sabotage of your car, and you've got evidence for all of these, then the probability for any of those to happen by chance is far too slim. So you have to write down everything that has been done to you. So that's already pretty good for court. But then if you combine your testimony with somebody else's who you don't know, and you have no connection with them, but they report virtually almost identical offenses, then that stands up in court, because it is impossible that the same stuff happens to all these people who are all of good standing and are honest people, you know, across continents. So this is the idea behind the affidavit. And now let me show you, because what I did is I've uploaded on my website. If you go to Stop007.org, I should say the website needs tidying, but I will do that when I have the time. The very first link, this is the affidavit draft template. Okay, this is a draft, people. And I have uploaded 2 forms. One is an OpenOffice version, which is like Word, but unlike Word, you don't have to pay for OpenOffice. So please download OpenOffice. It's just like Microsoft Word and so on, but it allows you to just, you know, look at this document. So you can click here, and then you download the affidavit template. Or, and by the way, there you can write into it and you can make notes. I'll just open the PDF to show you. So this is the draft template, and the entire idea is that I'll give the community something like 2 weeks to read through this and actually tell me if there's any aspect of their targeting that's not included. Okay, so the first 2 pages are an explanation of how you should use this. And if you find any aspect of your targeting that I haven't taken into account here, please send an email to contact@stop007.org. And into the subject line, please write affidavit template so that I can pick it out quickly. So these 2 things. And then look at the affidavit, because the entire idea, so there's a long index. The entire idea behind this affidavit, don't be scared because it is 86 pages, but that's because I've done most of the work for you. The idea is the following. You write your name here, so it's your affidavit. Then this bit you can leave blank, because that will be whatever court cases will be used for. And then you write I, so-and-so, of so-and-so. You type in your full address and your country. State on oath and say as follows. I make this affidavit based on my personal knowledge, unless otherwise stated, and that the following facts and matters are accurate to the best of my knowledge. So this is the beginning. And then at the very end, you have to just, when you finished writing your affidavit, you have to notarize it. Okay, that's the idea behind it. You sign a statement of truth, and you don't sign it straight away. You sign it before a witness who's qualified to administer oaths. Okay, so you sign here, and then whoever witnesses it signs it here and stamps it and so on. And that makes it then a notarized affidavit. Okay, so that's the general structure. Now the affidavit itself, let me scroll back up. Sorry, this is the index. So it starts here. So we all, you know, will have to give the courts some brief information about who we are and what we do, when our targeting started, a brief overview of the timeline and some other background information that might be relevant. But then the meat of it is this. What I've written for you is section headings like stalking, harassment, and street theater. And then I've given you a bunch of subsections here. And in the final draft, this text won't be here. It will be in accompanying notes. Okay, so forget the text. But what you will have is numbered paragraphs. And you can then write the offenses committed against you into these sections here, 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 and there, here. So everything that pertains to stalking, you can just write in here. And this is the PDF, so I can't actually write here. But if you download the OpenOffice version, you know, I think that's this one, then you can type it in straight away. So you can go to this to the section. For example, I want to write something down. Oops, I just realized the numbering. Oh, God. Okay, I have to be careful with the formatting. I'll fix that. But when you get the right version, you can just put your cursor here and start typing. And if you want a new paragraph, you just press enter, and then the numbering of the paragraphs automatically adjusts. Okay, and I set it up like this because most courts want consecutively numbered paragraphs. But the entire point of this is if we all agree that everything we have to say about stalking goes into section 2, and then, you know, categorized like this. And then everything we've got to say about, say, interference with post and deliveries goes into section 3. Then if we all write these affidavits, it makes it very easy to compare affidavits in court. Okay. Now, I have tried to include absolutely everything that there's to say about targeting. So intrusive surveillance, public humiliation, that's, you know, if they quote your private conversations in public and stuff like that. And then, you know, the involvement of neighbors is here. So you can write down who your neighbors are who are harassing you. Sabotage of vehicles and assaults in traffic. You know, if you get hit with directed energy weapons when you're driving your car, like I am, you write it down here, and so on. So what I'm asking from the community now is, first of all, realize this is a draft, okay? This is not the final version, so don't start writing your final version into this one. But do take notes, write bullet points as your own memory, you know, aid, and then go through this form and see if there's anything in here. You know, I've got break-ins, and I've got many, many other things. I've got, of course, directed energy weapons, hacking, I've got the attacks on family and friends, all in this document. So I can just show you how extensive it is if I show you the index. Hang on, let me go down. So yeah, this is the table of contents, okay? So you've got stalking and harassment in street theater here. Oh, damn. And many, many other things. So just download this document and go through it and see if there's anything about the attacks on you that has not been included as a section heading. And the reason that's important that you tell me is because other people might have suffered something very similar. And if I include a section, then we can compare our affidavits, right? We can compare notes. We can compare what happened to us. And then if you have an affidavit from somebody else who says the same thing under, say, sabotage and assaults traveling, or home break-ins and thefts and vandalism and property damage, then you can really easily explain to a judge that this is a big program. Okay, so that's the affidavit. I've first of all, do not be scared that it's 86 pages. What this means is that you don't have to write all the stuff that I've written. And it's almost like, you know, like a questionnaire, or, you know, a multiple choice thing, if you like, because you just have to enter what applies to you. If something doesn't apply to you, you just leave it blank, or you write not applicable, you know. And it is a lot of work to write this down, but then again, what has been done to real victims is just years and years of abuse, okay? And we have to somehow record it for posterity, and we have to record it for court. And yes, I know that people say the courts are corrupt, but also the courts can't be that corrupt when you have literally thousands of people approaching them with the same problem, you know? And we'll be recording how judges react, what judges say, and that will go down in the history books. So this is the best idea I have. So I asked the community to please have a look. Please let me know if there's anything missing. And in 2 weeks' time, or well, it's less than 2 weeks, on the 1st of October, I aim to release the final draft. There will be no changes of the section numbering after that. And the section numbering is the most important thing, because once we agree on that, you know, we can just put one affidavit next to the other, and then a judge can go through and say, section 4, home break-ins, amongst victims, it will look very similar. Very many people will say, you know, they broke into my home and they didn't steal anything of value. They just did this. They cut up my clothes, or they cut up my wallpaper, and so on. So that's the idea. That's the affidavit draft. And the idea is that once the final version is released, it will take a lot of time to fill it out for victims. But once they're done, we can use it for court cases to stop this insanity. So thank you for listening, and sorry to take up so much time.
No, that really looks comprehensive and well put together, Katherine.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for doing it.
Yes. Do you have a section where they can write in other things?
Yes, and
that's unique to them.
Absolutely, and the entire point is, so I have to go through, because in some sections there are lots of mistakes in it already. I found some, but the idea is that at the end of every section, so every theme like stalking or home break-ins, the last subsection always has the title other, you know, home break-ins or other stalking, where you can put in stuff that's really just specific to you, stuff that you think was so unique, it only applies to you or very few people. And what I'm asking people to do is, if they think that there are certain things that apply to many people in the community, that's the stuff I want to know about, because then we should have a separate section, you know. And every section that we have is a sort of an aspect that we can cross-validate across victims. I think right now I have a total of, I think, 49 different aspects of targeting or something like that. And one of the things, there are a few things I wanted to highlight. So there's a very large section on, first of all, your physical symptoms, physical injuries you had from directed energy weapons. These we can compare to the Cuban, situation. But there's also a large section on attacks on your family, maybe childhood targeting that you might have suffered, deaths in the family, murders in the community, because we also have to say that it's not just one person being attacked in our experience. It's sometimes an entire family or an entire community. So I made, allowances for that. You can also enter things like signs and symbolism. Are there any satanic signs? And then there's a huge section where you can write down misdemeanors or irregularities when you're dealing with medical doctors or psychiatrists and psychologists or police or military police or lawyers and courts. And then there's an even bigger section where you can write down stuff like denial of help. So who are the people who you went for help and they just denied you help? They didn't return your emails, your letters, or they just literally sent you away. And the other thing I would like to say, sorry, just to finish off, two things. Number one is I've also taken voice to skull into account, and I have to expand the section actually. So please help me, all those people who have voice to skull, have a look at the voice to skull section and tell me what I should put in. I also put in a section 48 right now is called quotes. And I encourage people to write down pertinent quotes from voice to skull, because I want judges to understand what sort of dirty and disgusting language people are being, beamed with nonstop. There are racial slurs, there are misogynistic slurs, and absolutely everything under the sun that one can imagine that's just really humiliating and disgusting is being broadcast through voice to skull. And I want judges to understand just how low the intelligence agencies are when they are doing this. And then the last thing I would like to point out, and this is thanks to Karen, she had the idea, and I think it's brilliant. Section 47 is called Perpetrators and Dying Declaration. And in that section, I would like you to name names. I mean, you should name names throughout the entire document, but in that section, I want you to list the people who you hold responsible for your targeting. These are people who actively engaged in your harassment, who you know to be involved, and they have to be named. And it's called a dying declaration because some victims are, their life is threatened nonstop. And, if people threaten you that they'll kill you before you go to court, you can get back at them by just writing this, write up who these perpetrators are as your dying declaration and submit that. Because the idea is also that in court, they say that, once you're dying, you've got no interest in lying at a court. Why would you make up false statements against somebody? So it is very, very powerful, So let me know what you think, guys. And the wider community out there, you've got 2 weeks, let me know.
Outstanding. Thank you so much.
Is that on your website, 007?
Yes,
Just to remind people?
Yes, it's at the website. So it's stop007.org. So if you go there, let me go back. You should just type stop 007 as you see it here, stop007.org, and then you'll get through to this website, and it's right here at the very top. You'll see affidavit draft template, and then the link is here for the open office document, which you can edit yourself, and this is the PDF. Now, I've just noticed that if you open OpenOffice with Word, the formatting gets distorted. So I really encourage everybody, whatever operating system they're using, just download OpenOffice. It's for free. It works just like Microsoft Word, but it's for free. And then everybody can see the same template. It's also platform independent.
Also, Katherine, just let me bring this up. I'm really interested in why people are targeted, because everybody isn't targeted. And I think my notion is that they're very special and they need this special kind of upfront treatment. I don't know, maybe this is way off topic of your survey, But I'd like to know why they think they're targeted. Is it because
Yeah.
I don't, just because it's everybody's being eliminated with the Wi-Fi and the 5G and the chemtrails and the GMOs. We're all being subject to this, but there's special people now that they've picked out from the general population. It seems that they either are especially worried about, they need to get special information on them, and then what are they going to do with this special information? I mean, after the whole thing collapses, which is predicted by everybody, even by the elites, what are they going to do with the inside of Ramola's mind? What are they going to do with a collection of Dr. Horton's responses? What are they going to do with this? Why did they pick these people? I'm really interested. We're all in the program. We're all scheduled, but it's you guys are scheduled first and require a lot of personal attention, information. They're really interested in you guys.
Well, I don't know, Paul. I think I have a couple answers to that. On the one hand, I think people who've just crossed paths with criminals, okay, criminals in that pyramid who are working as informants, those 15,000 FBI informants, for one thing, okay, are just part of the mafia or the Masonic or the Satanist sects that are sitting inside local law and local fusion centers. You've just crossed paths with the criminals, and they put you in this program. Or you've been at a protest, you've declared yourself as an activist in some ways, an eco-activist or an animal rights activist. They've been taking pictures of you, as I certainly experienced many years ago, being taken pictures of at an animal rights rally. Or you're an anti-war activist, and there are many, thousands of us who are anti-war activists, you know? So they've been keeping tabs on people who are anti-war activists, who are animal rights activists, who are activists of any kind, health advocates. I mean, look at Sherry's story. She was speaking up for Alzheimer's patients and she got targeted. You know, these are people who are upstanding people of conscience and integrity who are speaking out in communities. And you cross paths with the mafia, with the organized mafia, with the organized crime cartel, and they throw you into these programs. And you have to ask, what are these programs, you know? And that's where you begin to understand that what these programs are. These are just means for totalitarianism, for suppression of the entire populace, not just of you, because you are being used as a scapegoat to shut down communities. You are being used to be made an example of. Your voice is being shut down and censored just so that their voices can be shut down and censored, so that they can look at what is and see what's being done to you, because it's undeniable to see that weapons are being used on you, to see that antennas are being trained on you, to see that helicopters and planes are stalking you, you know, in your own backyard, in your own neighborhood, and that cars are zooming into your neighborhood to park in your neighbor's driveways. People are using cell phones and corralling them into these programs as well to help track you and hit you with microwave weapons. So I think this is being used to shut down communities. It is nothing but totalitarianism. That's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is the huge monetary value here associated. You know, people who are targeted are being sold, are being human trafficked into military weapons testing contract projects, which have thousands, millions of dollars associated with them, okay? And we have been doing a bit of research and digging up some of these contracts. Those contracts exist. These research projects are ongoing. They are being hidden from the population by the absolute and abject failure of mainstream media to inform the populace. And then the other thing that's going on is MK Ultra, which is where the biorobotizing, the Neuro hacking, you know, the constant V2K, the desperately bad, evil stuff that Katherine was talking about being piped into people's skulls using military weaponry, that's going on. That's all part of trauma-based mind control. It's straight out of MK Ultra from the 50s. It never disappeared. It merely went underground, and it surfaced in the Office of Naval Research in the Air Force, the US Air Force with the SEER training, and in DARPA, and probably some other places that I'm not thinking of right now. But the Air Force Research Laboratory, the Office of Naval Research, and DARPA, I can call to mind, are three organizations that engage in research that have to do with the brain, with remote neural modification, remote behavioral modification, and remote control of human brains. You know, so that's what's going on. They needed scapegoats. And who are they throwing into the scapegoat program? They're throwing people they want to eliminate first, people who speak out, people who stand out. That's sort of where I am with this. And of course, you know, there's money being made at every stage of this. There are people making huge amounts of money off the suffering of TI.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I would also like to add that if anybody's watching and they say, okay, I'm safe because I'm not a whistleblower and I'm not speaking out and I'm just going to stay quiet and hope that they don't see me. No, because the vast majority of people in this program were doing the same thing. They were basically minding their own business, having their own lives, and they got hijacked or shanghaied into this program, I think, with the mentality that if we take this bus driver here, we take this school teacher here, we take this housewife there, and we take the CPA over here, they're all so random, nobody's going to believe that they're all in the same program. And then I think they got the idea, hey, let's start throwing journalists and whistleblowers and other people who annoy us into this vast number of general people. And yeah, maybe they say, we're just going to throw in people who seem to be pretty intelligent, because why not get rid of them first, you know? So I think they have this mass of people that they're able to throw specified targets into and still retain plausible deniability, because they say, okay, yes, well, you're a whistleblower, but the guy next to you who's claiming it, he's a bus driver. So this doesn't seem to be logical. Well, yes, that's subterfuge. You're basically thrown in with a general population that they feel is expendable. So if you think that you can stay quiet, lay low, and it'll avoid you, I don't think so. You're just basically missing your chance to stop it before it gets to you.
That's a great comment. And the more information I can get on why you guys are in it, I just think the TIs that I know and I talk to are basically uncorruptible. And that's a big problem for them, because their program is corruption. And if they find minds like Karen Stewart, who is not going to go along with it, they need to know about that mind. So if they find it again, what are we going to do? So that's the notion I'm working under, but you're exactly right. They're making money on it. It's probably a source of endless entertainment. Yeah, I hate to think of it, but I like to think that the targets that they have now are people that they can't deal with otherwise. People that, if left on their own, would put too many monkey wrenches in their program. Not that you're not already doing it, but I think they need to know why.
And you know, Paul, I think also there's a huge arc here. You know, even if you see targets as being, you know, selected people who are highly incorruptible, which is all true. You know, there are people who stand out and for some reason have stood out. You know, there's a whole arc here, and and what I would suggest is go back to Tavistock. You know, go back to the turn of the century and the lunatics who started their eugenics programs and started psychiatry. They were thinking about psycho-civilizing the population, psycho-controlling the population way back then. You know, that's how the DSM was created, right? So it was created as a manual of repression. And they gave, and this whole program has the mark of medical tyranny associated with it. It's a medical dictatorship. And the DSM is at the core of it, the DSM and the psychiatrist, who comes along and says, who's brought forward as the expert, the sort of the fake expert. He's trotted out as the fake expert every now and then for any reason, to control whole communities in different ways, right? Whether it's toddlers or teenagers or whatever. And now it's populations. Now we're in a state of totalitarianism where these people who are running these large programs of social engineering are striving to shut people up and keep them going in one direction, and keep their mouths closed. And as Karen pointed out, these people are keeping their mouths closed now because they think that's the way to do it. Be safe, stay silent. Stay silent, be safe. So they think that's it. So one, they don't.
Some of the things, Ramola.
I'm sorry?
Some of the things that have been said, at least in my hearing, is sensationalism, as Paula said, and entertainment. Something else that was said was being used to train the others what will happen if they tell. I remember hearing in 2008 via the radio broadcasting technology,
mm-hmm.
the perpetrator required strict obedience, and that if anyone told, they would be killed.
Yes.
That I made someone filthy rich selling my body. And that was to train torturers. Other words that were spoken was primary focus was on women and girls. So, Paul, you're right in that. Is it really sensationalism and entertainment? Entertained by any of the things that have happened to me. And I really do worry about the idea that something like this is happening to my daughters or my granddaughters.
There's so many aspects to it. I mean, it's definitely that exploitation of the woman, of the woman's body, and usage is what it is, and ultimately also it's threat and intimidation of the people around you. And at the other arc, I wanted to talk very briefly about the end of that arc, Paul. It's that we've got documents now from the military and the Air Force looking ahead to where they see the control of the human brain going. They see it going directly into a computer. They want to download brains into computers. They want to set up electronic cybernetic networks. Okay? They want to remove human beings from the equation, but use some of the brain. So you see, one of the things they're doing to V2K victims is they are draining out memories. They're draining out life memories in order to replace it with whatever they want. They are mapping neural networks. They're trying to download people's entire brain, like a lifetime of brain activity, into a computer model. They're trying, some of the NASA documents talk about downloading avatars, creating avatars where they're downloading personalities. So, and they have little milestones marking, by when they think they can download the human brain, by when they think they can download the human personality. So you see, they're creating virtual worlds, virtual realities. They're trying to move into a BCI, CBI world, that's a brain-computer interface world, into an artificial intelligence world, into a virtual reality world, an augmented reality world. And they're also trying to, at the same time, completely control the population through dumbing down the education system, and also gaining consent by shutting down media and just trickling out little articles every now and then about these brain techs, but in terms which attempt to gain consent. So there's no public debate. It's just presented to you. Oh, this is technology. Look how great we are, and look, now we just get a smart card tattooed into our left wrist or whatever, and it goes on from there. And now with a little brain chip, we are connected to the internet, and we can learn languages overnight, and this is how kids are going to learn. And it's all about consent, and it's manufacturing consent, really.
Right. And you have to know that this has been in operational, surely in development stage for 50 years.
Yeah, we had breakfast with a guy who had he's a techie, and I don't even have one of these little devices. I call him a scrying mirror because I think that's what it is. But he was talking about the iPhone X, which is, one of their symbols is the phoenix. iPhone X. The phoenix is the death and the return. It's all the different prophecies of this time are about that. But the iPhone X, it's going to be able to create what they call an augmented reality next to you. In other words, you won't be chasing a Pokemon Go on your scrying mirror. You'll be standing next to this augmented reality. Maybe this augmented reality is the place for your downloaded personality. I don't know how it's going to work, but it's getting darker and darker. And I think they want to just show you how evil they can go. And if you're going to be an interference to them, they want to know all about you. So if anything like you shows up, they can do whatever they need to stop it. But you know, if you look at the iPhone, everybody has one. If you're in the United States and you don't have an iPhone, you can't get a cab. I mean, the enslavement is all around us.
Yeah, it's all about control, and I see it as an arc of control that they're just trying to ramp up more and more of. And I really think humanity needs to wake up, because not only is, as Karen said, everybody going to be targeted, but it's already happening. And I think part of what we need to do is actually point out how everybody is being targeted. And I, in fact, would like to do a lot more about that, in my own writing.
Yeah, I think Mindy is thinking about writing something. When she went back to the States, she was amazed at how the matrix has grown up around you. You really, I mean, when I was back there in 2013, I rented a car with paper. Well, that blew their mind right there. I didn't have the reservation on my little device. So she is gonna write something up, I think.
I do have that.
We're running from a forest fire right now, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, we've got a big fire out there, and it's
oh my gosh,
it's coming our way. I have a small car. If I need, fires are prevalent here, and since we don't have planes that fly over and drop things, there's a very sparse population. They just generally let it go out, and if it goes toward the houses in the town, there's firemen. But up on the top of the mountain where we live, we just have to see where it's going. What did the gardener say?
So we just uncovered a place where we can put a hose in.
Okay. We're set up to have hoses, so we're going to do that. But anyway, don't worry about us. But I just think it's a fascinating topic, because the TIs that I know, and I get calls from, I sit on the phone with them during the day. They're special. These people are special, and I think it's not random. I think it's people that could really cause this. It's got to go total black. That's what they want to go. They want to go total black.
Well, this is why, Paul, I think we should emphasize that they're not going anywhere. They're not going to a total control. They're not going to a total black. That's because we are here on the planet. We are speaking out, and we are stopping them. This cannot go further.
Right. Good thinking.
It's not human, I mean, that's the end of humanity. So I think this is the thing that we need to get across to all of humanity, that literally you're looking at the end of humanity in the face if you don't jump up and do something right now.
Right.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Agreed.
talking about
Absolutely
doing
agreed.
something right now, hearing about this forest fire makes me really uneasy, Paul. I really would like that you guys go somewhere safe like now.
Well,
Literally, I think
We'll be okay.
We're done. We'll be okay. There's fires here a lot, especially this time of year. Just this one's pretty close, but we have to go. We have gardeners here today, and they're hooking up. We have big hoses that come out. We have 1,000-gallon tanks, and these tanks will be able to wet everything pretty close to us. So we'll probably be okay.
Yeah.
And your
Don't
roof.
worry. Yeah.
I want you both to be out there with a hose like right now, just so that
We will. Since we're done.
You know, somehow this conversation has overextended our usual time period, or maybe this is what we're starting to do now, more of. But we're well over our 2-hour limit here. So.
I think we should all wrap up. How about each one of us says something to finish off, and then, you know, we let Paul and Mindy save their lives.
Yes, absolutely. I think I'm done speaking. I've spoken a lot today. Anybody, go ahead.
Okay, well, Millicent,
For
go
those
for it.
who that they are safe by not speaking out, or those who feel that if they don't say anything, they will be let out of the program. I want to just, what Paul has said, what Ramola has said, that's not going to happen. County, just yes, a week. Multiple people that I know are dying a week, and all of those people would have known about what's happening to me, who is doing it, how long it's been going on. Therapist made the best statement when I told her, I said, but I understand that, you know, these are Masons and they're supposed to be safe from the program. And she said, aren't they dying too? So don't feel that your silence, your safety net. It's not.
Good. Well, I'll sign off by just saying it's really an honor to work with you guys and work with the people in the chat. I think we're trying to work at stopping a program that's well underway. It's like they targeted the first most moral, the most upstanding, the most willing to take it to the mat people. And they might have made a big mistake doing that, because we're going to give them a lot of resistance, all the resistance we can give them. I also want to mention the portal. We're going to come back again Sunday night. The information is growing. We'll be able to get some information. We'll be able to make some findings from that information soon. And
people keep contributing. One thing, we are hard to find now because we're not on Pinecone Utopia channel. When we do the live portal, it's done from the Paul Marko channel. And there are 3 or 4, or maybe more Paul Markos. So finding the right channel can be a challenge. But please join us. They're live on Sundays at
8 p.m. Eastern is what we've been doing. And that's it.
That's it.
Thank you very much. We're going to go and deal with that fire. So I'll talk to you all later.
Yeah. Thanks
Bye-bye.
so much. Bye, Paul. Bye, Mindy.
Thank you.
Yeah. I didn't have a chance to say that what I should do perhaps is put a link to their channel on my channel. Maybe subscribe to it so people can find it.
Yes. Excellent.
The Paul Marko channel. Yeah. Wonderful.
Excellent.
Karen, did you want to?
I can leave you with one quote. And it says, "Courage is contagious. When a brave man takes a stand, the spines of others are often stiffened." And this is Billy Graham.
Good.
So this is not only aimed at maybe the military people, but also the Christians and any and all other people who consider themselves moral.
That's a wonderful note to end on. Katherine?
I think that's wonderful, and Karen scooped me because I had dug up a quote as well, you know, and this is a really positive quote. It just shows you how, you know, people are encouraged and will join you, and that's true. People will join you when you speak up. The quote I had dug up is kind of the consequences if you don't speak out, and I wanted to share it because it's quite a long quote. So this is from Martin Niemöller, who was a pastor, a priest under the Nazis. And a very famous quote by him, there are different versions, but this is the one I'm going to read out, is: "First they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me." And that really resonates with me, because I think as these wars were fought, they genocided the Iraqis, and we didn't speak out. Well, actually in London, there was the biggest protest in the history of Britain against the Iraqi invasion and against the Iraq war. But somehow speaking out wasn't enough. But then there were many other wars. There was the war in Afghanistan, and then many, many other wars since then. And somehow we haven't spoken out. And now they're coming after us here in Western Europe and the US. And actually, we are lucky because for the first time, there are people to speak out for us. And these are the pastor in India and his community. So we are the lucky ones because we actually have people to speak out for us. And I think it's now, the duty is on us to wake up our own militaries and our own intelligence agents and the heads of intel and put them before a choice. You either will have an arrest warrant and the biggest damages in history against you personally, or you will actually turn around and help us all out. And I think this is what we should do. And this is what we should tweet and, put to them over Facebook and whichever channel we have. So that's it for me.
I love it. That's brilliant. I do think we need to actually let the intelligence agencies and the military know, those who are actually doing this to TIs. This is it. The game is over. Absolutely over. You've come to the end of the line. You've exploited enough people. We're here, we're standing up, we're speaking out, and you are going down. So, take your choice. Go down or confess and face the music, because the music's heading your way. And that's it for me as well. So I guess on this brilliant note, we should all say goodbye and wrap up and see you again next week. Thanks so much for watching and see you all next week. Bye-bye, everyone.